Hello there, my name is Bruce Rain from Brungus Creations, and thank you very much for joining me on this stream today. It is Monday here, it is a public holiday, and so I guess that means in the US it is Saturday evening. So hello to you all, thank you for joining. I do appreciate it. I am going to try and keep this live stream fairly snappy tonight, or today. Only because I've got rather a lot to get done today. So, but I had this opportunity to work on this board, and I thought it'd make a good live stream. So here we are. So, quick little shout out. Hello Jay. Hello Jeff. Hello Muon. Hello Thomas. Hello Isakil Blah. All things DG. Captech. Who else we got? Hello to me. Sadmac356, Steve is here, Sean is here, JJ Brubaker is here, Jared Burma is here. Hello to you all. If I missed anyone there, it's nothing personal. I assure you, I was just sort of skimming down there. So, anyhow, as I mentioned in the thumbnail, I have got a Macintosh classic logic board here that was brought to me. Well, essentially, here's the story. I was talking to a guy. He bought a SCSI2SD from me. Shout out to Michael. How are you? He brought a SCSI2SD to me, and we just started talking about what he wanted to do with that SCSI2SD. And then he said, "Oh, I've got this old Mac Classic, but the logic, I wrecked the logic board while I was trying to recap it, so that one's gone. So now I'm just focusing on these other Macs." And I said, "Well, look, bring the board to me. I might be able to fix it." And so he did. He brought the board to me. He already had a recapping kit for it, which is... Did I forget to bring that down? If I did, I feel quite the fool. I think I did. I think I did forget to bring it down. Yeah, I might have to go up and get it. Or I can just use my own caps. No, I'll use his caps. I will go up and get it. So I'm just going to go to the top view here very quickly. So the problem that he's encountered here is he's torn a pad there, and he has torn a pad here. So we are, and who knows, some of the other pads might lift as well. So we are going to try and put in a repair that's going to enable us to kind of bypass those pads. Hello to Charles. Thank you very much for the super chat. That is much appreciated. And look at that in Australian dollars and everything. I know it's Australian dollars because Charles is from Australia. So there you go. Right. So this is... so I'm basically going to recap this, and in the process I'm going to fix up these little torn pads. Now, I did a video once on repairing damaged pads, and a few people did actually jump into the description. A few pedantic people jumped into the description and said, "Hey, you didn't repair the pads." And I had to concede, yes, you're quite correct. I did not repair the pads. I repaired the computer by reconnecting where that pad was broken. So just to clarify, it's not like I'm going to get little rectangles of copper and stick them down and actually make new pads on the board. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use wire in place of the pad. The wire is going to help provide some strength, and at the end of it, the board will be as good as new, and it will be repaired to last. If it doesn't, if it's not going to last, then what's the point? So technically correct is the best kind of correct. Is it? Are you another pedantic person, Sean? No, I mean, look, it is true. I did, as I say, I did have to concede that it is true. I was not repairing pads. And the thing is that there are people out there that want to know how to repair pads. They literally go out, they buy themselves little squares of copper, and they stick them down on the board with adhesive. And my video is not learning about how to do that. So, I mean, I can understand them, being terribly upset. Yeah, so anyhow, I've been getting quite a lot of views on my trace repair video, which is really interesting because I can always tell when the view count is up because I all of a sudden start getting lots and lots and lots of comments. Sometimes helpful comments, sometimes not so helpful comments. And so I've been, just getting this influx of people saying, "Oh, you should do it this way and you should do it that way. You're doing it wrong." Anyhow. Right, so, look, I think what I'll do is, as I said, I want to try and keep this moving, and of course anyone who is here to find out about the SCSI2SD I will be doing that next, because what I'm going to do is, once I finish recapping this board, I'm going to be testing it in the chassis, and then we're going to connect up a SCSI2SD there, and I am going to go through a few basics to do with SCSI, basics to do with SCSI2SD, and answer any questions that anyone might have. So if anyone's got any questions about SCSI2SD, start thinking them up now, get them all ready. Well, there'll be an opportunity for you to ask that. This is not a particularly big recapping job, only 8 caps on these. 7 47 microfarad 16 and one microfarad 50, which is actually still on the board. I think he decided after he damaged these ones he would stop removing anymore, which is fair enough. Which classic is this one? The 6. I will need some clarification on this. This is a Macintosh Classic 1, the very first of the classics. Did you fix the 4th transducer on the ultrasonic? I replaced it, so I didn't fix it. So this is now running on 4 transducers, or 8. It's actually 8 transducers and four power supplies. So each power supply powers 2 transducers. I also got rid of all of the mouse droppings inside it, and I got rid of the mice too. So you know, that's all good. So yeah, 8 transducers in there, 4 power supplies. With that power supply that people might remember, I unwound the transformer and in the process damaged that transformer beyond repair. Well, beyond what I was prepared to spend on it. So I just bought a new power supply, and I'm keeping the other one just for spare parts. So, you know, I ended up just I didn't live stream any of that. It was, because to be honest, it really was not a live streamable repair. I basically just grabbed the power supply out of the box and I put it in there and plugged it in, and away she went. So yeah, not actually a repair, that one. That was just a parts replacement. So anyhow, that all went well though. It was all good. That one is now working, so I've got the ability to ultrasonically clean all the big boards, which is great, because I had to ultrasonically clean a Macintosh 2FX board just recently, and they are huge. I did a private live stream. So this one was I was just live streaming to the Maciac guys, and while I was recapping a Macintosh 2FX, one of the original tantalum caps that are now 35 whatever years old blew up while I was actually working on it. So I decided that I did not want to send it back with tantalums that had the potential to blow up. So I replaced all of the tantalum caps on it as well. Heaps of them. It took me bloody ages. But anyhow, they're all new tants on there, so all good. So I did get it on video, so that's fantastic. And you know, I'll have to mute the sound, but I do plan to put that video up on my Facebook page at some stage. Right. Okay. Okay, right. So I think we're all good. So we're going to now look at getting this thing recapped and repaired. He saved me a bit of time by actually removing some of these caps, so that's going to actually make this recapping job just a little bit quicker. But we do still have to get this 1 microfarad 50 volt off. So we're going to move across to the microscope, and that is there. We go. And look, the colour's even good today. Look at that, how timely that is. SCSI. Going to be talking about SCSI later on. SCSI. Alright, so let's just get this little guy off. He has no place on this board anymore. No place at all. I'm going to come at this with probably use a little bit of a heat shield, because it's right next to the restart button, and those restart buttons do melt very easily. Like a little bit too easily for my liking. Yeah, that's a story for another day. Okay, so let's crank up some heat. Thank you very much for that, Jay. Yes, so there are recapping guides for quite a lot of Macs on my website, Recap a Mac, and there is also a store there where Australians can buy SCSI2SDs. Now, I should also mention, and this is something I'll be covering a little bit later on when we start talking about SCSI2SDs, I am selling hand-assembled PowerBook edition SCSI2SDs. Now, at the moment, as far as I can tell, they're very, very hard to procure. So if you are in another country and you are prepared to pay for the shipping, do send me a message via the contact form on my website if you want to buy one of those PowerBook edition SCSI2SDs. We can probably work something out. Okay, they don't cost too much to ship if you're prepared to wait a couple of weeks for them to arrive. If I just use the Australian postal system for sending overseas, It costs about, from memory, about 25 Australian dollars shipping. Now in US dollars that's a bit less because Australian dollar is not as strong as the US dollar. Okay, so here we go. Let's go in and clean these up. What we have left of the pads. Got 4 here, 2 here, 2 here. So does that sound right? I did say 8, didn't I? Yeah, that's right. 7 and 1. Yep. So we're going to get some of this flux, which just keeps leaking everywhere. I mean, it's got to stop soon. You know, I mean, they always leak a bit at the beginning, but I'm not at the beginning of this tube anymore. Oh, we've got a very lifty looking pad there. Got a lovely lifty looking pad there too. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that I think someone might have used the twist and pull method on this. Incidentally, I just want to get this out of the way quickly. It is not my place to kind of like name and shame people who have attempted recaps and failed. Part of what I do in my channel is try and encourage people to do this stuff themselves, to try it out themselves, to learn how to do it. Watch my videos, practice, all that sort of stuff. So, you know, when people have failed attempts, it's just part of learning. So, I don't really knock other people's recapping jobs, and I don't knock it when they have failures. What I would say to everyone is here is a very good reason to practice on something else. And also, here is a very good reason not to use the twist and pull method of removing caps on an old board in particular. So, let's go in and clean up what we have left, and we'll see just what the condition is of some of these other ones. So I've hit this with a really good liberal amount of flux, and now I'm going to hit it with some fresh leaded solder. So what we're doing with this, and I'm just going to push that pad down a bit too because he's lifted up off the board. There's a pin. We've got a nice little pin there. Let's take him off. So that's the leftover pin from the cap. So we want to make it so that we get all of the black gunk off these pads and are left with a nice shiny pad all ready to take on new solder. And we are doing that with a combination of flux, fresh solder, and some heat. Interestingly enough, this board is in pretty good condition. Anyone who watched my live stream from a couple of days ago, I was working on a Mac Classic and it was in a terrible state. Terrible, I told you, terrible. Took quite a lot of cleaning and a few little trace repairs. I was in touch. Oh, I haven't got my film extractor on. I was in touch with the guy who owns it. This was when I was opening up the mystery box. I was in touch with the guy who owns that box the other day, and he was a little bit surprised with just how bad that board was. He did send me, I think, how many was it? 4 Mac Classic boards, I think? 4 or 6 or something like that to all be recapped. So anyhow, that's the first one saved, which is the good thing. Practice on rubbish, not on a classic Mac. Yep, that would be my main recommendation. Go and practice on a PC, Windows machine for sure. Excuse me, just going to have some G's. Lovely and sweet. Okay, a couple of quick shout outs. I need to mention these while we're doing this. First of all, AppleSerialNumberInfo.com. Jay, if you're around, please drop the link into the chat. AppleSerialNumberInfo.com. For any of you out there who are wanting to find out information about a particular computer, a Mac computer, and you've got the serial number and you want to find out some details about it, go on to AppleSerialNumberInfo.com. Now, I know a lot of people go to every Mac and they do it. You will get more info out of AppleSerialNumberInfo.com. You get more info about the computer and where it might have been made and when it was made. But more importantly, his also includes quite a lot of vintage Macs. He's growing that database at the moment. But most importantly, if you visit that site, on the homepage, you will find a new poll. This is April's poll for the Mac of the Month. The winner of last month's Mac of the Month, which wasn't a Mac at all, but never mind. The winner of last month's Mac of the Month was the Apple One. So that was the winner, and the people voted for it. So don't complain about it not being a Mac, because that's what the people voted for. This week, we have got 4 new ones to choose. We have got, Jay, would you mind mentioning? I mean, I'm sure people can see they can see it if they visit the page. But if you could just mention which ones that are there. Welcome back, Steve. So the ones that are there is we've got a Quadra 950. We've got an Exer Earth. And I think there's two other things that I can't remember. I could, of course, just click on the link, couldn't I? And tell you. Okay. Okay, we've got a Quadra 950. We've got a 1998 iMac. That's the old tray loading one. That's the original one, isn't it? A 2002 Xserve. 2006 MacBook 13-inch. So, yeah. Now, of course, I would never presume to influence anyone's voting. But I would mention that I absolutely 100% have voted for the Quadra 950 as it is one of my favourite vintage Macs. Actually have one. So I'm very happy about owning one of those. But of course you vote for what you want. I mean, let's face it. I mean, the original iMac, wow, what a big thing that was for Apple. So I totally understand if people want to vote for that. Same with the original MacBook. I mean, you know, the white plastic ones. I had one of those. They sucked opening them up, but, you know. Anyone who watched my silly live stream from yesterday, that MacBook Pro is still in pieces, but I have replaced the keyboard, but I haven't had a chance to test it yet. So, let's get some of this old solder and gunk off these pads and get them looking shiny and clean. See, this is what I'm after. I'm after nice, shiny, square pads all ready for a new cap to go on. Thomas Armstrong, I have a Q700, as do I, and I have to tell you that's one of my favourite Macs. Is anyone going to say it? Is anyone going to say the line from Jurassic Park? Anyone? See, look at that. Look how good those pads look now. They are so ready for a new cap to go on. Did I get the laptop keyboard going? Yes, as I just mentioned, no, I haven't. I've swapped over the keyboard. I've given the board an ultrasonic clean. I have yet to put it all back together and test it, and I'll be doing it after this live stream, or if there is time at the end, I might do it as well. But we'll just see. Got a lot to cover in this live stream, so I'm trying to keep the pace moving. Yeah. When I'm doing this sort of repair with damaged pads, what I do is I make an assessment of what I have at my disposal and then figure out how I'm going to repair it. So it's a Unix system. I know this. That's the one. Yeah. Of course it wasn't a Unix system, but never mind. Now I do believe that operating system, that graphical operating system they used in that, where it's like a 3D operating system, I think you can still download it. I tell you what, I would love to download it and load it up on a Quadra 700. How cool would that be? Someone's probably done it. But, yeah. So I wonder whatever happened. I mean, I'm not sure. I've seen the girl from that from Jurassic Park. I don't think I've ever seen her in anything else. She had a very small part in Jurassic Park 2. Has she been in anything else? I mean, did her career just end after that? I've seen Timmy, little Timmy. He was in that mini-series about World War II in what was it called? Can't remember. Someone else might remember, but he was the main character in that. He was very good in it too. And of course, good old Sam Neill, the New Zealander that we all pretend in Australia we all pretend he's Australian. We go, oh, Sam Neill, oh yeah, Aussie actor, but he's not. He's actually a Kiwi. Just cleaning away some of the gunk here and being very, very careful, because I don't want to actually lose this pad that I've got here. This one here in particular. He's looking a little bit ugly, but he'll do the job. I will probably, I will definitely put some UV mask on here to hold that in position once it's down, but it'll be fine. Max, hello. Glad to hear you've still got the 950. Seriously, that's going to be one of the, rip it from my my sort of, my dead hands type thing with that, because I am never giving up on that 950. I absolutely love it, despite the fact that it takes up so much space. File System Navigator by SGI in Jurassic Park. Can you run it on a Quadra 700? I have a spare Quadra 700 board that needs repair. So do I. Join the club. Join the Quadra 700 board repair club. Okay, all right. Bruce's vote is irrelevant. Vote Xserve. Vote Quadra 950. Vote Quadra 950. Vote Quadra 950. Okay, so do all you microscopers agree that Bruce's linked AmpScope 7x45 room standard is the shiz and accept no substitute? I would certainly say that. I love this thing. It's made the difference. I mean, the first sort of repair work that I was doing, which was predominantly on MacBook Pros and MacBook Airs, you can't do that sort of repair work without a microscope. I mean, the components are so bloody small. It's just not possible. You can't do it with the nude eye. It's a Windows machine, I know this. Oh, Sean, you stirrer. Micro Mage Repair, please feel free to message me somehow or other. I don't know how. Maybe on Facebook or something like that, with any details of those other microscopes. I'm always happy to put links of alternatives that in there. Okay, I am. Okay. Oh, Quadra 900 power supply recently died. Going to try a recap. Yeah, well, I haven't tried it recently, I'll be honest. Hello, Alex. How are you? I haven't seen you in ages. Yeah, Quadra 950 with a Power PC card. I think I did actually test the Daystar Power PC card in mine, one that I repaired for a customer. Right, now, obviously we've got no pad here, but what we do have is we have quite a thick bit of trace just here. And that may end up being my new pad. Get a bit of solder onto that. Just put the component on slightly askew, and I think that will hold that component on good and strong. I don't think there's going to be. I don't think there's going to be any need for any sort of wire or anything like that. I think that little bit of trace there should be plenty. So that one's going to be an easy repair, no real big deal there. I might repair the other one another way, even if I can do that, because, yeah, I'm not going to be able to do it with this one, because you can see the trace is really small on this one. So I don't want to put too much stress on that little trace, so I'm going to use a piece of wire for that one. Alright, cleaning up the pads. Cleaning up the pads. If anyone's just tuning in, no, I did not do this damage myself. This was my one of my customers that did that. Interestingly enough, this was not a recapping customer. This is a customer that bought a SCSI2SD off me. They found my link on eBay, and they started chatting to me and eBay, asking me eBay questions, and he then sort of came back to me and he said, "Hey, Recap a Mac, is that your website?" I said, "Yes, it is." And then the next thing you know, we started chatting about this, and I said, "Look, send the board to me." Magnifying glass and a cheap digital. Yeah, I mean, I started with a cheap digital, and you know what? It's better than nothing. But what it really does do, anyone who has started with one of those and then moved to a microscope like this will tell you the same. Using a microscope like that, what it does is it makes you want a microscope like this more and more. The recap I was doing yesterday, if people might remember, this particular bit here, there's corrosion all around this pad, and I had to, you know, sort of paint UV mask all over that. All right, so these ones are looking good. These are just nice, whoops, straightforward ones, those ones. Oh, and of course, if anyone did miss my live stream from yesterday, if you, as I said, it was a pretty stupid one, but if you are someone who has watched my live streams before, when my little chicken Bernadette has made an appearance, she made quite a sizable appearance in yesterday's live stream. So for anyone who's been missing Bernadette, jump onto that, jump on and have a watch of that. I don't know, probably about halfway through, something like that, or towards the end. I get a visit from my chicken Bernadette, and she almost knocked my glasses off my face. Right, now I'm just going to get the old beepity beep beep machine. For anyone who is not aware of what that is an auto sensing multimeter, auto ranging. It's a multimeter anyway. DMM, digital multimeter. It's a fluke that I use. This was my first fluke. Before that, I've had lots of other multimeters. There's one just there, and there's another one floating around, and I've got another couple floating around as well. The fluke has been really, really good. They're ridiculously expensive, but I have to tell you, they are made really, really well. So anyhow, I've got it on beepity beep beep mode. That is, it will beep to test continuity, and I'm going to just go down here and test this one, because you can't see it terribly well. I might zoom in so you can get a better look. There's a little dip. Can you see the little black dip between there and there? I just want to make sure that we're getting continuity there. And we are. You probably can't hear the beep over the sound of the exhaust fan. What do you call that thing? Fume extractor. Sorry, Steve, missed out on Bernie. Yeah, Bernie popped up here, sat up on the microscope, and then as she was spinning around, she started losing her balance, so she started flapping her wings and just went straight across my face. Anyhow, so there we go, Brankus Creations, with twice as many chickens as before. Right, so this one here, what I'm going to do to repair this one, I'm going to hollow out this hole here, in other words, suck all the solder out of it. I'm going to put a wire in there, a nice thick wire to go through that hole. Then I'm going to run that wire down here and attach it to the side of the cap, and that wire is going to be thick enough to provide some strength, just hold that cap in place. But the first thing I'm going to do is scrapity scrape. Here it is. I'm going to scrape away some of this off the top of that trace. Yes, Alex. That's nice to hear. I do like to speak to fellow chicken folks. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chickens. Yes, I have 5 chickens. And of course, the main thing I like about chickens is fresh eggs, because I love fresh eggs. Anyone in particular who likes poached eggs, there are so many tricks out there for how to get the perfect poached egg. So you didn't think you were going to get this in a recapping live stream, did you? A lot of people think there are all sorts of tricks about, getting a perfect poached egg, adding a little bit of vinegar, not making the water too deep, getting it spinning into a little funnel, and then dropping it in the middle of the spinning. But I can tell you, although many of those tricks do work and you may want to apply them, the most important thing for getting the perfect poached egg is a fresh egg. I don't know how it is in other parts of the world, but here in Australia, by the time eggs make it to the supermarket shelves, they are usually weeks, sometimes even months old. And I do happen to know it is the same in other countries as well, because it's something that I've researched. So it doesn't matter if you rock up and grab the eggs as soon as they come off the truck. By the time they're at the supermarket, they're already old. And you can tell the difference when you get a fresh egg and you crack it open, and you get a less than fresh egg. The albumin, or the white stuff, it comes out like a thick blob. So when you drop a fresh egg into water, you know, for poaching, it holds together as a single piece. It doesn't string off, and it's almost as it's poaching, it looks like a piece of mozzarella cheese in there. As opposed to if you get a less than fresh egg and you put it in and the white's all stringy and it all just frays away and you just end up with a poached yolk. So anyhow, that's enough about eggs and chicken and poaching and yum, yum, yum. Right, so that was nice and easy. I've just sucked all the solder out of that there, just so that using a little bit of solder wick. Now we're going to flip over to the other side and I'm going to just make somewhere for that wire to go. And that is... where'd he go? There he is. He's there. So I'm going to bend that wire over and just attach it to the end of this little capacitor here. It's a 1A5. That's a little code to tell you what the capacitance is on it. Don't ask me to tell you what that is off the top of my head because I cannot remember. But 1A5. It is a capacitance code. Days old at most, freshest food in the world. Yeah, look, what I would say to everyone, if you do like poached eggs and you do like fresh eggs, find someone who has chickens in their backyard. They're out there and knock on the door and say, hey, can I buy some eggs from you? I mean, even where I am here, I know that like there's someone that sells eggs from their yard, you know, like one suburb over. I know 3 doors up there's someone that's got a whole stack of chickens in their backyard. So, you know, people have chickens in their yards. Find them, make friends with them, buy eggs from them. So, right. Okay, so this is the wire I'm going to use. It's a slightly thicker wire than I normally use. In my trace repair video, I do actually give details about all the different wires I use. And this is 0.31 millimeters. Now, that's going to be of no use to people who work in AWG or American wire gauge. I don't remember off the top of my head. Actually, it might even be in the description. I might actually have this wire in the description. But if not, it's definitely in my trace repair video and my pad repair video. I do mention all the different wires that I use. So we're going to solder this down here. As you can see, this is an enameled wire. That copper color is not actually copper. That is the enamel on the outside. This is the sort of wire that you would use to wrap around a transformer, like this sort of stuff here. So it is insulated. It's just insulated with a very fine coating of plastic around the outside. And what we're going to do is we're going to melt that coating away with the heat of the soldering iron. So I'm going to get some flux with hair in it. Flux with the hair in it. Okay. Going to just get that there. We don't need a whole lot. Are you still leaking? Still leaking a little, but not as bad as he was. I mean, the way to stop it from leaking is to pull the plunger back out, but that's a bit of a pain too. Are deviled eggs a thing anywhere else besides the US? I think deviled eggs are actually a UK invention, aren't they? I could be wrong. Someone by all means fact check that, but I thought a deviled egg was actually an English invention. No, oh, okay. The anchor point via by C3. You'll probably talk about the other side of the board. We'll have a look at that when I finish this, Steve. Always happy for Steve's eagle eye to spot something there. Anyone who is not familiar with Steve, and I don't know how anyone could be, he is very famous. He gets mentioned by all sorts of people. So, yeah, Steve, Mac84, who does a lot of this recapping stuff himself, and repairs and things like that. If he tells me that he might have seen something, I will sit up and take notice. Okay, just get a little bit more. Just want to neaten this up. That's a good solid connection there. There we go. Right, then I'm going to trim it, and I on my trace repair video, I've just been getting so many comments from people saying, don't cut it, you shouldn't cut it, don't cut it, don't cut it. Well, there you go, I cut it. I do cut it all the time. I'm careful, I don't break things. Okay, C3 you said. You were talking about this one here. I'm not sure if that was a message that went in before I checked it, or whether you weren't here when I checked it, but I did check that I did check that with the beepity beep machine, and we do have continuity on it. But thank you very much for spotting that, Steve. Right. Okay. Oh, I'm a bit behind on the chat here. Oh, Dave, hello. Thank you for joining. Okay. 5 egg omelette with onions. That sounds nice, Jay. That does indeed. All right. Okay. T Miller, have I said hello to you? Hello. All right. Now, this is the wire that we're going to use to actually hold the cap in place. And what I might do with this now is I might just going to bend that around a bit there. I'm going to probably melt the enamel off it now, ready to go onto the cap. And I will actually put this cap on now. All the other pads are clean, so it may as well go on now. Melt, 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 melt. There we go, looking nice. Alright, so now the cap goes on, and for that we are going to use a 47 microfarad 16 volt tantalum cap. I will grab one of those right now. I need to buy more caps because I have got so much recapping here at the moment, they will run out in no time at all. Can't do it today though because it is a public holiday. So we'll start off with this, sticking him onto the good side, which is this side. So I'm going to plonk him about there, and then we will get this wire, which I'm just going to move out of the way a smidge. So I want to kind of wrap it around the end of the cap. So there we go. Now, I do have component adhesive that I can use. You know, I could have put some component adhesive down, sat the cap on top of that adhesive, baked it till it dried, and then just attached some wires to it. But I believe I will get enough strength. This is going to be, the whole purpose with these is to make a repair that's going to last. And I am quite confident that when I'm finished this is a repair where this is not going to fall apart unless someone really wants it to. Okay, so we're soldered onto that side. There we go. So we've got some strength there. I mean, this isn't, you know, you can see it's reasonably rigid there. That's just being held on by that one pad on that side. And then we'll get this wire. We will wrap it around there, just like that. And I'm just going to solder it onto that pad on the side there. And we'll just make sure we get plenty of solder. Sorry, I'm not in the center there. As I've mentioned many times in my streams before, I get a larger view through the eyepiece than you get on the camera because I'm looking at a big circle and you're looking at a rectangle out of the middle of that circle. So I'm often doing things and I'm going, oh, this is this and this is that, and then I look up and I see that you can't see what I'm talking about. So I'm just going to add a bit more solder. I don't think there's any harm in being fairly liberal with the solder on this one. There we go. And we'll make sure that that's all nice and strong at that side too. There we go. And then snippety snip this off. And try not to cut my finger when I do it. There we go. Off he is. Now, you know, is it the same as it was when it was original? No. But is that solid? Yes. That is absolutely rock solid on the board. That ain't going anywhere. As far as I'm concerned, that is a repair that will last a lifetime. Whose lifetime? I'm not saying. Having a graphic design background going way back to early pre-press days, how did you get into Macintosh repairs? So here's the kind of the interesting thing. So since I was very, very young, I've always had an interest in electronics, in soldering. I used to build kits when I was younger. I've always had an interest in programming, computer programming. I kind of left school quite young with no real idea what I was going to do. Went into a job just in sales, but I just always had an interest in computers. Always very, very interested in computers, and in particular Macs. I was definitely a Mac person because I was exposed to Macs quite young. through a friend, and I just always liked Macs. I just always had a real thing for Macs. I then, after this job just in sales, just working in a shop, I got sick of it and decided to look for something else. I got a job at a place called, don't look for them, they're not around anymore, Northern Districts Education Centre, and they used to service schools. So they were all Apple, and I was working with Apple IIs then. So I was doing a bit of programming, a bit of setup and installation. I didn't work there for very long because the company went broke, but that was not my fault. I will just say straight off the bat, it was not my fault they went broke. And I then just happened to kind of luckily land a job just through pure enthusiasm with a pre-press design studio. I just rocked up. They were after just a junior dog's body, and I just rocked up, went for the job, talked them into giving it to me, and just worked my butt off and learned a lot of stuff, and just continued increasing my technical knowledge and stuff, and just got into that way. So I was never actually a designer, but I worked in a design pre-press studio, and I was just sort of mainly doing tech stuff and that, and pre-press, of course. I completely and totally learned the pre-press trade, that's for sure. But always had interest in programming, in technical, in electronics, in how computers work. Just always had that. And then when it actually came to the repairs, it kind of started with a Macintosh SE30 that I got. And when I got it home, it had no sound, but it worked. And when I got it home, I opened it up and one of the capacitors fell off the board. And that introduced me to the world of recapping. I then recapped that one terribly. I made an absolute mess of it. But I recapped it and it worked, got sound back. I was super happy. Then I started getting into, I got hold of a MacBook Pro that was broken for cheap. And I looked up and I found out how to repair it from a Lewis Rossman video. And so I started learning how to repair MacBook Pros. And then, so I did repair MacBook Pros for a while. Then I found there was a niche with the vintage computer repair. I had all of this equipment, the microscope, all the gear, the soldering iron, the hot air station. I then went back into doing recapping, and so it's a very kind of roundabout way, but that's basically how it happened. God, that was a long anecdote. Okay, so I'm going to stick the little 1 microfarad 50 volt capacitor down onto this board now, and then we'll just continue with the recapping. Okay, so that really. Okay, what do we got? Okay, oh, yeah, all good. Yep. Using with holes was that easy for me. Ezekiel, it's not always that easy for me. That one came out so easily. It is often a nightmare getting solder out of holes. Okay. Oh, Garth, thank you very much. Thank you for that super chat. Much appreciated. Right, let's. I might just get some fresh flux on this. This is all old flux here. So there. And we're just going to put him in position. Oh, by the way, Jay, we've been talking about the leaking flux out of these syringes. One of the things that I have found that helps is to obviously, number one, take the rubber plunger off the end of this so that it's not pushing against the sides. But what I also do is I trim the circular part here so that the air can escape out the sides. So when this goes in, it goes in and out a lot easier. So just sort of letting you know that, so it's not trapping air in there. And that does reduce the leakage, I've found. Still leaks, but. And incidentally, Garth, you are most welcome. Thank you for the super chat and thank you for watching the videos. If people ain't watching them, I'll stop making them. So the fact that people do watch them makes me happy. Okay, so this is the 1 microfarad 50 volt going down. All of these sizes on these vintage Macs, most of them are the same for this particular era. They all come down to four basic sizes, I think. Yep. So you've got your 47 microfarad 16 volt, 10 microfarad 16 volt, 100 microfarad 6.3 volt, and 1 microfarad 50. If you keep a reasonable supply of those four, you'll be able to recap a lot of vintage mats, a lot of different types. I can't pull it back anymore to stop the leaking. Well, hopefully if you take the black rubber thing off, it reduces the leaking, and in particular snipping that circular part so that it doesn't trap air down the barrel of the thing. So if we look at, here's this, see how it's circular? What I do is I just trim, pip, 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 pip. I trim those off so that air can get in and out and it's not trapping the air in there. But it works for me, but I can't guarantee it's going to work for you. Right, let's get some more caps on the board. This was me meaning to do a nice quick recapping, and of course, because I talk so much, quick is not the order of the day. Right, a couple more, and we will of course test this board. I've still got my Macintosh Classic board there with my analog board in it, and we will test it out with that. You know what I didn't do? I didn't put any UV mask under there. I think we should be fine, it's right down the middle. But I will put some mask over these ones here. We've got a few little traces sitting a little bit close to those pads. I've mentioned this before in my live streaming videos. We're putting tantalum caps in a spot for aluminium electrolytic, and the aluminum electrolytics have narrower pads or pins on the component. And as you can see, these ones are wider, so when you solder these down, they hang over the edge, and if you've got any exposed trace, like for instance there, I put that down, that could touch it and create a short. So I'm going to put a little bit of UV solder mask down on that one. These ones here look okay, it's still intact there, and there's nothing going down the middle of that one there. So we're safe on these. Safe as houses. What will happen to the houses? They will be consumed in the fire. So this is definitely not the first recap repair that I have done, and you know, I quite like doing them. Something like this, I do plan in the future to do a YouTube video about repairing mistakes in soldering, because that's a very important part of soldering. When you are looking at a mistake as like, oh no, this is broken, you know, that's a terrible state of mind to be in. If you are able to look at something and think, you know what, I can repair that, I can repair that, it just gives you a completely different feeling of confidence about the work you're doing. Okay, 2 more caps down, we've only got 4 to go. Full board short to ground. Oh, we love that, don't we? There's a little bit of history in that comment. That's to do with some of the live streams we've watched. We've watched Steve slave over a board repair, getting his multimeter out. And I have to honestly say, Steve, I agree with you with the situation you have at the moment with that new multimeter that you bought. It's a nice looking multimeter, but having that delay with the continuity beep, that's a bit of a bummer. Going to take it back. Okay, so I'm just cleaning off any excess flux here because I'm about to use a bit of UV mask, and I don't want the UV mask. I want the UV mask to be stuck to the board and not stuck to the flux. For those who watched the recapping I did the other day, I replaced this component, and I was like, oh, I wonder what sort of component this is, and Thomas Armstrong said it's most probably a voltage regulator, and I'm like, yeah, I think you're probably right, given its proximity to the power cable and everything here, it probably is. VR1, voltage regulator 1. That was a bit of a giveaway that I didn't even notice when I was working on it, so yeah, it is definitely a voltage regulator. It's only $30 well worth it, as my other multimeter wasn't auto sensing and also has alligator clips. Yep, that's good. Alligator clips are good. Gotta like alligator clips. Alright, so that's fine, that's fine. I'm going to put a bit of UV mask probably around here and around here, and probably over that little bit of exposed copper there. So we'll get out the mask. We'll get out the paintbrush. This is a size 000 paintbrush. There are smaller ones out there, but this one's pretty darn small. And this one is extremely dirty as well, so isn't that good? Volunteer robot. I was mentioning the other day that I am going to need to buy some more UV masks soon, because this one's getting a bit kludgy. That is a word. And I prefer it when it's a little bit sort of smoother, a little less viscous. I hope everyone's saving up those SCSI2SD questions, because we are going to be moving to the SCSI2SD as soon as we've tested this board. And I am going to be going through a few sort of just general SCSI2SD basics, a few general SCSI basics, because I find myself answering the same questions a lot of the time. So I thought, you know, even though this is not a pre-recorded video, this is a live stream, I can still send people to say, hey, start watching from, you know, whatever, 60 minutes in this one or something. I've got a delivery coming today, which is kind of unusual because it's a public holiday, but never mind. But I have received a notification from DHL that it is on board with delivery and it is coming. Quite looking forward to it. It is a replica Macintosh SE board that has come from Kai Robinson. I think that's his name. I hope I got the surname right. I can't remember. I think it's Kai Robinson. So I'm really looking forward to that one. That's going to be a fun little expedition to. There's nothing on the board, but he has given me a few components, some of the hard to find ones. I'm tempted just to pinch the ROMs and stick them on my SE, because my SE doesn't read or write high density floppy disks. It only does the H800K floppy disks. So, right, well, that's enough. I'm content with that. Tell me C6 is getting a wire. No, C6 ain't getting a wire. Does it bother you? I mean, would you rather I put a wire on C6? I can if you want, but I was planning just to put the component on sideways and solder it onto that. That's what I was planning. I reckon I can get enough strength just soldering onto that little bit of trace there. Can you cope with that, Jay? Is that going to... Will you be able to deal with that? Are you emotionally prepared for that outcome? Yum, 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 yum. What's his name? David Jones from EEV blog. He's done quite a few reviews on multimeters, and there's one that he recommends. It's a budget model, but he says is really, really good. I probably would have bought it if I'd have seen that video before I bought my Fluke, but the fact was that I had been buying gradually more and more expensive multimeters and still been unhappy with them. So I just thought, well, if I'm gonna keep spending this money and being unhappy with them, I'm just gonna go get a flute. The problem I had with the other one is it's got auto power off, but it didn't always work. So I'd sometimes just come here and sit down and the thing was still on, or the battery had gone flat, and that was just really frustrating. And then the other problem I had with it is it gave me some pretty unusual readings when I was testing capacitors, whereas this one here, they're accurate. How would a device react to a blown cap? It depends a lot on what the cap's role is on the device. Here's something that we've talked about before. What board was it? I think it was a Macintosh TV, I think. Someone sent me a Macintosh TV board once to work on, and I just decided I was going to test it before I started recapping it. So I plugged it in, fired it up, away she went, sweet. Pulled the board out, had a look, realised that the guy had already removed all the caps on it. So that was a Macintosh TV with all of the surface mount electrolytic capacitors removed. It still worked. I don't know how long it would work for, but it still worked, even without those caps. Blue SCSI, that's one I'm going to get. Cheap, open source, and comes in a kit that requires some basic soldering. It's good to go. Yep, the Blue SCSI is good. There are a couple of things I don't like about the Blue SCSI. Number one, I don't particularly like the format. I don't like the fact that the SCSI cable comes out the top of it rather than out the side. That's a relatively minor complaint. It doesn't do SCSI 2, which means it completely rules you out from using it on some of the newer Macs, because it just simply will not work with them. If you try it on, say, an early PowerPC or something like that, I mean, I know they have IDE, but it just won't work on them. And there are a couple of other things, but look, it's a project in its infancy, the old Blue SCSI, and I do happen to know that there is a very high likelihood that someone who might be talking right now might actually end up selling them in the not too distant future. Just saying. Pre-assembled or in kit form. Might. Didn't say will, but might. So just saying. What model flute do I have? It is the 115. I don't believe it's deprecated. I'm pretty sure it's still available. When's the Brankus dictionary coming out? So with things like scunge and gunge and kludge and that sort of stuff. No wire is amateur hour, not up to Brankus creation standards. You see, here's the thing, and look, I'll put wire on there because, look, you know, you're probably right. At the end of the day, it'll be neater because it means that the cap won't be on at an angle. But what I'm often with these videos trying to demonstrate is I'm trying to demonstrate that there are lots of different ways of achieving the same thing. And the point that I was making with this is one of those I did it with a wire, and the other one I do it just by repositioning the capacitor. Because it would work fine. It would work fine like that. It would be nice and secure, it would be held on, it would be making contact, and it would be, and it would repair it, as ultimately the computer would work again. The downside to it is the cap would be on crooked. So that's kind of the reason why I was going to do it that way, is for the purpose of demonstrating the process. But, on the downside, it will end up crooked. And so, yeah, all right, I'll put a wire in there just to keep Jay happy. See, Jay, you're very influential. I know you don't give yourself credit for it, but you're very influential. Yeah, that's okay. Alex, thank you very much for posting that in there. The Aneng AN8008 multimeter and $30 US or less. So there we go. That's out there. So Steve, send the other one back and buy this one. I don't watch as many of the EEV blog videos as I would like. I wish I had more time. I don't watch as much YouTube content as I would like, period. And that's mainly because I'm just so busy all the time. I like to relax a bit with a Mac 84 live stream. But often, if I miss the live stream, I don't even get a chance to go back and watch them. I've got a list of things that I want to watch as long as my arm. Right, well, I think this mask is probably fairly well cured now. I know this is a fairly dull and boring thing to watch. And apparently, what we have to do now is run another wire. Now, will I be as lucky with this one in removing the solder out of the hole? Huh? Going to get some flux on there. Flux always helps solder to flow. Need plenty of heat, and we will get some wick. I go through a lot of wick. Hello, Bernie. Okay, yeah, see, this one's not being as cooperative as the other one. Let's try adding a little bit of new solder. Why are you doing that? Okay. Let's see if we can get that out now without this stupid twist in the whip. Yeah. Yep. So yeah, look mention there obviously to the old EV blog, fellow Aussie. We won't say anything about his voice. And I tell you what, that guy knows his stuff. You know, he's not a hack like me. He really knows what he's doing. I think it's one of these two. One of those two, I think. I could be wrong, it may not be one of those two. I think it is. Let's figure it out. It is 1, 2. It is just below the second pin it'll be to the left when I flip it over. Ah, yeah, I was the wrong one. It's this one here. Yeah, look at that. Okay, so let's go back and put some solder on the ones that I was doing incorrectly. There we go. Games we play. Hello from the US, and thanks for the videos. You helped me pull a poo-poo from my old Nintendo without skunking the whole system. That is excellent. Right, time for wire. Wire going in here. And away we go. Oh, actually I should have probably scraped a little bit on the other side, so I've got somewhere for this to go. I'll do that now. I'm going to just anchor it onto the end of this cap. So I'm just going to scrape away a little bit of that. Scrape away a little bit of this mask here. I'm going to come at it from a better angle. There we go. Get some fluxaroni here. No, I'm not done. Sorry. I was trying to do it quickly. Shout out to Mike and Mike's Mac Shack. Haven't seen a video in a while, Mike. What's going on? Or have you been live streaming while I've been asleep or something like that? Come on. I'm going to melt off the enamel from this wire. Come on. Well, this ain't my neatest, but it's there. I really want this little hole here filled in. And look. Okay, then we do a little bit of a trim. Once again, using my scalpel. I'd like to do that just to upset people, because so many people clearly don't like me using my scalpel. Because I get so many comments from people saying, don't use a scalpel. So I keep using it just to get people really upset. Alright, now we're going to melt off the enamel for this wire. So I was not going to do this wire, I was going to do this a different way, but I got in trouble from Jay. Cutting corners. You've got to listen to Jay. Okay. All good. I'll just wick away some of this solder now, because I actually want this fairly solder free at this stage. We'll add solder later on when we've got the cap in place. Haven't had anything to play with. Tomorrow I'm streaming. Awesome. Andrew Kirkby, hello. 5 to drop a like and say I'll be back tomorrow to watch in full. Thank you very much. 2:35 AM here. You must be in Europe somewhere. Okay. Righty. Let's get these caps on. Alright. I'd be finished now if it wasn't for Jay, just saying. Oh, and of course a big shout out to Jay, House of Moth, for the help that he gave me yesterday while I was working on MacBook Pro. He came with some excellent suggestions. I haven't had a chance to go back and actually action any of them, but I will be. I'm determined to get that MacBook Pro working because, well, quite frankly, it is an i7 2012 MacBook Pro, which means it's one of the models where it's nice and easy to replace the batteries. It's not one of the models that has GPU issues, and it's an i7, so it's a quad core and it's got a bit of grunt. And it came for free with 8 gigs of RAM in it, and I'm pretty happy about it. And it is going to become my new workstation, assuming I can get it fixed. So I'm very motivated, because prior to that I've been using 2011 15-inch MacBook Pros, because I got a whole bunch of those really cheap, and we know why I got them really cheap, because they've got really bad GPUs. And I managed to keep one going for a really long time, but the GPU just cacked itself just a little while ago. Knew it was coming, but it was just like, yeah, I'll get use out of it as long as I can. And then the GPU died. So I was looking for a replacement laptop. This one came through. 10 minutes behind, had to put the kid to bed. Fair enough. So when it comes to getting solder out of the hole, heat is one of the most important things. I mean, yes, you want flux, yes, you want good quality wick. I use good wick, 2mm braid. I like it. I've found it to be the best that I've tried so far. Yeah, and you need good heat, so you've got to make sure you're getting nice flat heat to the hole. And that's one of the reasons why I use a beveled tip, because a beveled tip has obviously a nice, it's got an edge, but it's also got a big flat bit. And the big flat bit is the part where I'm going to get this anchored down on the good side first, but it's a little bit tricky. There we go. Yeah, so I use the flat part of the bevel in order to get the heat where I want onto the wick. And if it's a really stubborn hole, I pull out the big guns. I've got this great big soldering iron tip with a great big round bevel on it, and it just churns out a massive amount of heat where I want it, and then I can generally get solder out of pretty much any hole with that. Alright, so we have got all 4 caps happily sitting in a row, and then we've got our wire here. We're now going to get that wire, we're going to put it up against the pad here, try and get as much, so I do it at a bit of an angle like that, I get as much surface area as I possibly can onto the pad, or sorry, not pad, the pin. I know it's a great big flat thing, but it's still called a pin when it's on a component. Or a lead, you can call it a lead. And there we go. Oh, what's that? What's that? There we go. Right. So then I am going to just nearly cut my finger with the scalpel blade. There we go. And away we go. So there we have it. And once again, if I give this a really good shove, that ain't going anywhere. Safe as houses. Okay, there's our little row of caps, and you know what? To look at this, I'm just going to change my views. Yeah, top view. We have a look at this here. Look at that. I mean, you don't know that's been repaired to look at it, do you? I'll get a bit of the UV solder mask down there, but that just looks like any old recap. There's just like looking at it like that. There is absolutely no indication that has been repaired. Just looks like any old recap. Is Sean still here? Geez, what did I watch with Sean's the other day? Action Retro. I shouldn't be giving him bugs. He's got so many subscribers. But what was I watching? Oh, that's right, the accelerator. The 040 accelerator in a SE30. So jealous. Right, let's go and test this thing. I'm going to turn my fume extractor off because it's extremely noisy. I'm going to go get a classic chassis. It's got my analog board in it, which I haven't tested in a while, so I sure hope it works. Where's the Quadra 9 Fitty? Yeah, so I choose the 2mm braid, just sort of mentioning that. Lucky I was here to make sure you don't cut corners. Yes, it does look good, doesn't it? Alright, okay, going to go get the classic. It's just out there. I won't be gone for long. I won't have the back soon or anything like that. Because you can have a look at the ultrasonic cleaner in the background and my new pegboard. And that's a 2FX. No, it's a Mac 2. Oh, that's the spaghetti board. Still haven't fixed that one. Sorry. So whoever owns the spaghetti board, it's all in my system, but I haven't fixed it yet. Ugh. One of the things that I really do like about the Classic, because a lot of people give the Classic a fair bit of grief, one of the things I really do like about the Classic over, say, the earlier Macs, Mac Plus, SE, whatever, is the fact that they finally built the reset buttons into the case rather than being a clip-on button. Very frustrating. Very frustrating. Is the ROM one pin over in the wrong spot, or am I confused? Let me check. I'll compare it to the other one. Holy cow, you're right. Jeez, eagle eye, sir. Let's hope that this ROM isn't wrecked. It's a very high likelihood that it is. I would not have even checked that, Steve, so thank you very much for that. I didn't realise that this person had a fiddle with it. But yeah, it very much looks like it's in the wrong position. So we will we'll double check that against my board, because this currently has my logic board in it, including my memory expansion card. And we're going to unplug the SCSI and unplug the floppy drive. Guess how I would know? Yes, indeed, 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 indeedy. I did have one person send me a computer with the ROM in the wrong place. It wasn't a classic though. God, look at that. Have a go at you, Steve. Far out. It's definitely in the wrong spot. Boy, I wonder if it's going to be wrecked. Because, I mean, you know, it's just a question of how long it was left on in that wrong position. Let's get it in the right position to start off with. Oh, crap, I didn't leave myself any room. Oh, yeah. Let's put that over there. Over with my rollerblades. Okay. Okay, here we go. So, this is, I generally don't demonstrate this, but I am demonstrating it today. This is how I remove ROMs. I'll tell you what, if this ROM's stuffed, I might have to get you to send me one, Steve. Actually, I've got spares here, so it's all right if it is. Okay. Yeah, I don't actually have the APROM programmer. I will get one. Having watched Steve's video on the subject, if you haven't seen it, go and watch it. Feel free to drop the link in there if you like, Steve. Having watched Steve's video on reprogramming the ROM, I am very tempted to go in and get that and just, you know, have some spare ROMs available. The Mac Classic, not so much of a problem, because I have actually got lots of battery killed Mac Classics where I can just pull a ROM out of them. Any that are sort of beyond repair, that I've got, either ones that I've got myself, or if the customer's brought it to me and I've said, look, no, this is a no-hoper. A lot of the time those people end up just saying you can keep the board as a donor, which is nice. Then it just goes into my donor pile. And then the other day someone asked me for a chip and I said, yeah, no worries, I've got plenty of those. So I pulled the chip off one of my boards and I realised that it was my absolute last spare. I would not have given it away if I realised it was my last. Ow! Sorry, I've got a split lip here. Ouchie, sore. Right. Okay, so let's see what happens with this now. Because obviously if the person had fired it up like that with the ROM in the wrong position, they would have been getting a checkerboard screen or whatever. Or nothing, or whatever the case may be. Certainly not a chime. And then they're potentially gone to go and recap it. And it wouldn't have been the caps anyway. Ouch, ouch. Right, let's change cameras here, because that one's not a particularly good view. We'll just dip the camera down a smidge here so we can see the screen, because that's the important part. I'm going to pop this in. I've got system 7.0.1 installed on the hard drive for this one here. It has a traditional spinner hard drive. It is a 1 gigabyte Seagate Hawk. What we're actually going to do here, when I've finished here, is we're going to put a SCSI2SD in this. But is that even original? No. And what was I going to say? Yeah, System 7.01 is generally the operating system I would recommend for running on a Classic if you want to run in 7. It will run better under 608, but I quite understand that there are a lot of things that won't run under 608. I know that because I've been playing with 6 a lot lately, and there is so much stuff that doesn't run in 6. So, so if you want to move into the System 7 realms, 701 is best for the Classic, I believe. Classic 2, I would recommend 7.1. 7.1 will run on this, but, you know, I just think 701 runs a little zippier. Okay, so, as I mentioned, this is my analog board. It hasn't been tested in a while, so weird things could happen. But we have that in. I'm going to drop in the RAM expansion, and I would say we've got a fairly high likelihood of this not working, in particular if that ROM has been sitting in the wrong position for a long time. But we will soon find out, won't we? So, this is all exposed here to 240 volts, very dangerous, don't do this at home. I'm only doing it because I'm some kind of weird idiot. Okay, so, all plugged in, and we're going to switch them on, and 3, 2, 1... That is the sound of a problem. Oh, wow. That's my analog board. I think that's my analog board. Well, we'll soon test, won't we? We'll put a different logic board in. That's a very bright horizontal line. Is that... You had something like that on one of your Macs, didn't you, Steve? I can't remember which one it was. Anyhow, let's just try my logic board on this. I should have done that anyway, given the fact that I wasn't even sure that this analog board worked. So we're just going to do a quick little test using my logic board on this analog board, so that we can just isolate whether that problem was logic board related or analog board related. So I'm just going to plug this in very quickly. SE30, the bright white line, yeah, okay. See, I would have really thought that was going to be an analog board issue. Let's just do this without electrocuting myself. Okay, this won't... Oh, no, this should chime if it's working. Okay, so... The white line is the analog board. The lack of chiming, I believe, is the ROM. So... I probably need to abandon this analog board for now, until I figure out what's going on with it. What have I done? What did I do? What have I done? So, first thing we're going to do is discharge the CRT. I've done videos on that. Disconnect it from the mains power. So I'm just going to swap the analog board over with one I know works, so I was testing with it yesterday. So, got this connected up to ground. I'm going to pop this under the anode cap. I'm not showing you on the camera, you can't actually see this, I understand that. So if you're upset about not being able to see it, my recommendation would be to jump onto my YouTube channel, do a search for discharging a CRT on a classic Macintosh, and you will find a video that goes through and details the whole process. So this analog board is going to go into my pile of things that I need to repair that are mine, so they get done way later because I have to do all the customer stuff first. If I was to see that happening on a board that someone had sent me, my first thought would be probably some, potentially some cracked solder joints around the connector. Let me just wiggle him off around this connector here. I don't know if you can see it. That's the yoke connector. That would be my first place that I would look for problems. Right, let's put this away. Let's go get another analog board that we know works. And what we will also do is we will grab a classic board here, which has been killed by a battery, and we are going to have that ROM on standby because I think we're going to need it. I didn't go and get the board, did I? An idiot. Idiot. So this is the analog board that I've been working on in some of my other live streams, which successfully managed to get repaired, which is nice. Always like it when I get things repaired. Puts a smile on my dial. Okay. I've got a classic and 2 classic 2s. Obviously I could go up and grab one of the other, one of the classic 2s to test with, but I'm just going to do what I'm doing here. Oh, pickle. Oh no, we're good. Sorry guys, just confusing myself. Haven't been reading the chats all this time. How's everyone going? Yes, if you do end up with any of those sorts of things on your screen, either a bright white spot in the middle, or a bright horizontal line, or a bright vertical line, you do not want to leave them on like that for long, because you can end up permanently burning that into the phosphors. But keep in mind, these are these old screens where we used to use screensavers because of fear of burn-in. And of course, if you have a super bright line like that, your burn-in can happen a whole lot quicker. God, these boards are clumsy things to put in place. The stupid fan. Fan plug. It's just, this fan cable just needs to be longer. Not much longer, just a little bit longer. It's just very, very inconvenient. Just saying. Right. Okay, so that's in. Let's just pop a screw in to hold them in place. Yes, it is a shame once you have burn-in on a CRT, there is no repair path for it. That's it. It's burned in. Which is, if you've got a CRT, a spare CRT with no burn-ins, a very handy thing to have. Okay, that goes there. Tell you what, if this analog board doesn't work, I'll be very upset. I might even cry. Yes. Joe makes a very good mention there. This is exactly the same. I've encountered the same problem. I've had a collapsed line on an SE30 that was caused by one of the like on the U8 chips or UE8. It wasn't UE8, but it was one of them causing that. And yes, if this was an SE30, that's what I would be looking into. But of course, it's not. I would, and especially given the fact that with this known good logic board, which I'm going to just test with now very quickly. Just going to plug this onto the back here. Just make sure everything is connected that should be connected. Yes. Good to say yes. And we'll just, all I want to do is just switch it on long enough to hear a chime. Or a ding, and make sure we haven't got a white line, and then we will test with the other board. Nice audible chime, and I don't see a light. Yep, there we go. Don't worry about the flicker, guys. If there's a flicker, that's just the sync. And I don't mean the kitchen sink, I mean SYNC, sync, synchronization. It's just the refresh rate of the camera compared to the refresh rate of the CRT. Right, so that's known good board, mine. This is board where we think the ROM is cactus. So I'm going to plug this in now. And Steve, no, I haven't bought the extension cable yet. I really should. Or have I? I might have. Sometimes I just jump on and buy things on eBay and forget it. It might be on its way from China or something for all I know. I'll have to check. Okay. No chime. So we're pretty sure those ROMs are gone. Yeah. There we go. There's a nice dead ROM type picture. So let's swap the ROM over and hopefully that'll be it. If it's not, I'm still going to move on because I don't want to spend all day just working on this classic board. It's not what I'm about. Okay, here's the bad one. I need to probably label this. How do I need a pen or something. Here we go. So I'm going to just put a cross on this ROM. Cross, indicate that it is unhappy, so I don't get them mixed up. Where's my ROM remover? My patented ROM remover, which is actually a device for removing pins from watch bands. Is that it? There it is. Was the ROM fried? Did it work? Almost definitely ROM fried, yes. Okay, so there's a ROM with a cross. I might even have one floating around here. Yeah. Oh, what's that? Is that a ROM? No ROM? It's ROM from something. Let's put that over there. I'll remember it because it's got a cross on it. Okay, let's get this next ROM and we'll put it in the right position. As I said, I have had one instance where ROMs were in the wrong position. There we go. It's a little bit mean, isn't it? They gave you they've given a socket on this board where you can actually put the ROM. You can just quite happily put the ROM in a position that's going to fry it. I don't even know that the ROM in this one is good, because that board's never been resurrected. It's only ever been dead. So we'd just be hopeful. Failing that, I still have more ROMs that I can access. Can always take it off the known good one, can't I? All right. And still not working. Still got the lines. So there could well be other problems with this. Just how far down the rabbit hole do we go? I am going to just have a quick little look around here. As this is a board that was worked on by someone else, there is often, I very regularly find, the people accidentally knock components off the bottom of the board. So we're just going to have a quick little look. That hasn't happened. And then we will just try the ROM off the known good one, because that way we can isolate it straight away. And of course, I could have also gone in and created a short when I did the recap. It does sometimes happen. That's why I always recommend that if your recapping doesn't work, you go back and check your work again. And of course, any number of other things could be wrong with it as well. I mean, let's face it, it is a Macintosh Classic with leaky caps. Hasn't been ultrasonically cleaned yet. Cleaning could fix it. So, alright, we're going to just pop in known good ROM. And then if it still doesn't work, we'll move on to the next phase of this video, because I can't, as I say, I cannot afford to linger. And I will get back to this one a little later. So, known good board, known good ROM. And we'll just find out what happens with this. Whoopsie. Shenanigans. ROM shenanigans. Right, let's pop him on now. And okay, so 2 dead ROMs. I've got 2 dead ROMs. Aren't I lucky? Right, so this one I'm going to put a cross on this one as well. There's no point in keeping dead ROMs. There we go. And let's go and see if I can find another classic board. Just going to unplug that mains power, because if I just happen to lose concentration, I might accidentally hurt myself. Here's another one. Here's another. And this is probably going to end up being like my last spare or something like that. I too actually have a few spare logic boards. I've mentioned this in my live streams before. A while ago, an eBay auction came up for a whole stack of Classic 2 and Classic 1 logic boards. Just like, you know, logic boards in unknown condition. And I I just bought them, and at the time I thought I overpaid for them, but in this day and age, probably not so much. And they all had cap leakage issues, and some had some trace damage, and I repaired all of them. So I've got these spare Classic and Classic 2 boards floating around. I'll look to sell them one day when I can be bothered. Oh, excuse me. Okay, just checking everything. Always like to make sure I don't get complacent when I'm dealing with mains power. I like to keep the focus. Is every single ROM I've got stuffed? We're finding a very common thread here, aren't we? That's buggered ROM as well. So maybe I don't have a lot of spare ROMs. What's it take to duplicate the ROM chips? It takes a ROM reader and writer. If you want to know a little bit more about it, jump onto Steve Mac84's channel. He does go through the process with Classic of reading the ROM and writing a new one onto a blank one. And he had a few little hiccups along the way, but got it all working. So let's see if I've got any more Classic spare Classic boards here, because it's always possible, as in donors. I'm kind of amazed that that's the case, that they're all shot. My two spares. I've got a third one, I think, here. Let's have a look. See if we can find it. Hang on, what's that? No, I can't. That's a customer's board. I can't go around stealing ROMs off them. That would not be very good for business. I'm just going to have a look over here, because I did get a board from someone that had some terrible trace damage. Is that it? And I was going to repair it. That's this one. I really didn't think the ROM would have been shot on this one, but I guess it is. Okay, well, look, we know what the problem is. That's, I guess, the main thing. I might have to throw some money at my friend Steve and get him to send me a new ROM chip. Yeah, that's the most important thing, is that clean the sockets. It's the thing is that that one that I just tested that last one with, that's a known good board that I just tried a different ROM in. So, but look, I'll go in and have a little clean. I'll just put that back there. So this is my known good ROM, and I'll get this one and. So I've been able to get them all working, both of these boards working, using the same ROM. So this is the ROM that I really would have thought would have been working. So just going to try this one more time. And this was perhaps not making good contact. This did come off a board with some terrible corrosion. So perhaps the pins on the chip itself has some corrosion there. So let's try this again. Remain hopeful. Nothing's ever easy, is it? And certainly not the stuff that gets sent to me, that's for sure. No, that's the same. Yeah, I don't think there's much doubt about the fact that that ROM is stuffed. I mean, I take this ROM out, I put the other ROM in, it works. Take that other ROM out, put this ROM in, it doesn't work. It's fairly conclusive that that ROM is stuffed. Yeah. But I'm also happy to... video link is there. Excellent, thank you. I see socket could have oxidized, clean with IPA. Well, yeah, as I say, it's definitely not the socket because it works with a different ROM in it. There is always the possibility that the pins aren't making contact, but I'll be honest, these pins look pretty good. They're not heavily tarnished or anything like that. It's nice shiny metal on them, which just leads me to believe that those ROMs are stuffed. So, anyhow, not to worry. We know what the problem is. That's the main thing, isn't it? And it is something that can be repaired. As to whether I buy all of the programming stuff and wait for it to arrive from China, or whether I just ask Steve to kindly reprogram one for me and send it to me. It's looking like a very high likelihood with that. I know that it can actually be fixed, so that's the plan. Right, okay, let's just have a look at the chat. Okay, yes, all right. Known working board. I mean, just keep in mind that the board did work with the other ROM. This is a known working board, known working board. I will take the ROM out of this. I will take that ROM that I just tried and I'll put it in this. I'll see if it works. But I have already gone through this process of elimination. It may not look like I have, but I have. So here's the ROM that I would have expected to work. Never been tested though, but I would have expected to work. And I'm putting this ROM into a known good board. Known good board, ROM in, plug, power, switch on. Okay, see that screen? See what you're getting there? That is exactly the same result on two separate boards. So these are two boards that work with one ROM, but don't work with this ROM. It's fairly conclusive that the ROM is the problem. So. What I may end up doing in the meantime is I might give him one of the ROMs off one of my spare boards that I know works. When I say give, charge him for it, and then just get Steve to. I'll buy a replacement one off Steve, and then I'll use the replacement one on my own Mac. So, there we go. Okay, so this is my board, not his board. But we have already tested his board with my ROM and it worked, okay? So just in case anyone missed that, the board that I have been repairing the traces, so replacing those pads, it did work with the good ROM in it, okay? So it has been repaired. The only thing it needs is a good ROM. So just, I was swapping things out and testing things and doing things in a rush. People might have missed that. It did work with the good ROM. So we can put that one to bed. How are we doing for time? Okay. So now, as I mentioned before, I was going to go through and do a little bit of an informational thing on the SCSI2SD, including actually putting a SCSI2SD in this Mac. Mac Classic. Well, I better connect the power up. Won't work without that. And there we go. So we're going to fire this one up. Right, so I have basically discovered, I will go in and check these again later on, but I have basically discovered that I have a grand total of 3 bad ROMs. The initial one from the customer's board, we know why that was bad because it was put in the wrong position and obviously fired up in the wrong position. And if you leave them in the wrong position too long, you will cook the ROM. So that was this one here. Then I had another board which had terrible battery corrosion, and I pulled out this ROM from that as well. Also didn't work with this ROM. Once again, it doesn't look too bad. These pins are not tarnished. There's not heavy corrosion in this area, but it did not work with this ROM. So that one's cooked as well. Then we tried this one off another badly corroded, battery corroded computer, and it wouldn't work with this ROM either. But it did work with my known good board ROM. So, do I have a programmer? No, but I will. Okay. All right. So, I want to move on to the SCSI2SD side of things now, if we have time. Maybe you should just do it. I've already done the thumbnail. I've got to talk about SCSI2SD. So we're just going to talk about SCSI2SD for a little minute here. Just go through a few things. So I'm going to put that down for now. And so if anyone has ever watched my video on SCSI2SD, I have done a couple so far. I've done one which is more of a product review where I go and talk about the different types of SCSI2SD. And then I have done one which is a benchmarking video where I get the different types of SCSI2SD and a whole bunch of different types of computers, and I work out just how fast they are. So, so those videos there, if you're interested, go ahead and watch them. But what I don't really cover in that is I don't cover some of the setup. I do a little bit in the review video. I talk a little bit about the SCSI2SD utility for programming them. But I want to talk a little bit about the different types of SCSI2SDs and their different capabilities. Now, I make here SCSI2SD version 4.2s. I don't have one built at the moment because I've sold my last one. I'm going to try and build one later today. What if I need a bracket to mount that thing in a Mac? Do you sell brackets or anything? Yes, so I do, and that's actually something I'm going to cover with this as we go through the different types. But very first, I want to just mention something about SCSI. Now, a lot of people out there may or may not know that much about SCSI, depending on whether you grew up with them or whether you've got into this hobby a little bit later. SCSI stands for Small Computer System Interface, and it's a particular type of kind of data bus. One of the really good things about the SCSI, the SCSI system is that you can connect up to 7 devices to it. Now, in the olden days, like the PCs, you had IDE, you could have a master and a slave, and that was it. With these, you could actually have 7 devices. You could connect them externally. You could connect up scanners, CD-ROM drives, DVD drives. There are lots and lots of different things. SciQuest drives, zip drives. All these different peripherals that you can connect up via SCSI. And as I say, you can have up to 7 devices. In actual fact, you can have 8 devices, but one of those devices is the controller. So your SCSI controller essentially has its own ID, and you can't use that. So, which is, I think, is ID 7. Pretty sure it's ID 7 on that. So you're starting at 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 7 is the controller. So. But you can have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can have set up with devices. Now, the important thing is that when you have more than one device, or actually with any device, when you have more than one device on the SCSI chain, they each need to have their own unique ID. This here is a quantum hard drive, and what you'll see here, you may not be able to see it. Or maybe if I can zoom in on the microscope, we can see. When I change across to the microscope view, this is how we used to set the SCSI ID on hard drives back in the olden days. And what you have here are 3 little sort of headers that you can put a jumper on, and you jumper them across from there to there, or there to there, or there to there. And what these are, they're all generally labelled with A0, A1, and A2. And they are how you set your SCSI address or a SCSI ID. And the way it would basically work is if you had all of them off, you had no jumpers on them at all, they would be ID 0. If you had these first two jumpered, it would be ID 1. If you had these two jumpered, it would be ID 3. And if you had, am I getting this right? 1, 3, is it 1, 3, and 5? Is it what it says there? 5. Yes, it was. Okay. So if you had those two jumpered, it would be 1. If you had those two jumpered, it would be ID 3. If you had those two jumpered, it would be ID 5. And then if you wanted to mix, no, it's not. 5, 6, 7. It's 1, 2, and 4. This is messing with my brain. Why has it got 1, 3, 5 next to it? It's 1, 2, and 4. So ID 1, ID 2, ID 4. Then if you wanted ID 3, you had 1 and 2 together, which adds to 3. If you wanted ID 5, you had 4 and 1 together, would give you 5. If you wanted to be on 6, you'd have 4, 2, and 1 on, and that would give you ID 6. And it was actually basically just working in binary numbers. So if you imagine each one of these as a binary selector, depending on how well you know binary numbers, so you know 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 0, 0, 1, 0, 1, yeah, okay, we won't go too far into binary numbers, but that's how these selectors work. And so basically the way you would, the mnemonic that you would use, the way you would remember how to set the ID was this one was 1, this one was 2, this one was 4, and then you would just add them together to get the finished SCSI ID. Boy, that was clear as mud. This is probably something that would be better if it was scripted. Okay, so that's basically how you would set the ID on SCSI. 1, 3. Yes, you're right. I looked at this now and I can see that the numbers keep going up. So that's the pin numbers. So so I apologise for that confusion. That was me just reading that thing and managing to confuse myself in the process. So that's basically setting the SCSI IDs. And of course, the other really important thing with SCSI is termination, and that is when you would have more than one device, you would need to have the device at the beginning of the chain terminated and the device at the end of the chain terminated, and all the devices in the middle of the chain not terminated. And this is how you would set something to be terminated. This guy here, are these actually removable? Because some of them you would actually set the termination with a jumper. I've got to put my glasses on. I can't tell if these are in sockets. Yeah, they're in sockets. So these are removable. So if you wanted this to be terminated, these little bust resistors, B-U-S-S-E-D, bust resistors would need to be in place. If you didn't want it terminated, you would pull these resistors out, which I really wish I could put my hands on a pair of pliers now. There we are. Here's a pair of pliers. And out they would come. And so you would take those 3 resistors out, and this would no longer be terminated. So you would only take these out if it was going to be in the middle of the group of devices. I'm just going to make sure I put this back on the right way, because I do believe they have a right and a wrong way of going on. Oh well. Yeah, that way. Okay. So we've got SCSI IDs, we've got SCSI termination, really important parts of SCSI, and that carries on to these new modern replacements. Why is termination even required? Well, if you look at something like a USB bus where you can attach a whole bunch of devices and you can daisy chain them, they had all sorts of clever they have all sorts of, that modern technology has all sorts of clever ways of detecting how many devices you've got connected and all that sort of thing. The way SCSI used to work is if the bus wasn't terminated, it didn't know where it ended. You would just end up with problems where you're not able to read it. Now, I don't understand the exact science of that. I'm sure there's some information out there, but from my perspective, it was always, when we used to use these SCSI chains in the olden days, because I used to actually, where I worked, we would we would have sometimes, a whole stack of devices attached, a couple of scanners, a couple of external hard drives, SciQuest, zip. We might have the 4488 megabyte SciQuest, then we have the 250 megabyte SciQuest magneto-optical drive, the 650 megabyte magneto-optical drive, 128 megabyte magneto-optical drive, zip, jazz, so we've got all these devices attached on there. And even when you did everything right, you did everything you knew was right, you had the first device terminated, you had the last device terminated, and all the ones in the middle not terminated, sometimes it still didn't work. And there was a bit of magic involved, and you'd swap, I'll put that device there and that device there, and put them in a slightly different order, and you would suddenly find your magic configuration, and you'd just stick with it and not touch anything. You never want to remove or add anything to it because you just get it working perfectly. SCSI was a little bit like that. As slow as USB is, what a fantastic thing it was to not have to worry about things like termination and IDs. So, and also the quality of the cables you used often had an impact. We were always in the day looking to try and find the biggest, fattest, well-shielded cable, because if you get those really skinny SCSI cables, you may not get as good performance, or you may end up getting problems with multiple devices. So yeah, it definitely felt like voodoo. I would agree with that 100%. So yes, old networks needed termination as well. This is very true. I mean, when I first started using Ethernet networking, we were using thin Ethernet at the place that I was working at. It was the coaxial stuff, 10-base-2. And the ends of those had to be terminated too. So did PhoneNet running across the local talk connection. That needed to be terminated as well. You put a little resistor on either end. So, right, I'm just going to double check. And, yep, okay, right, I think we're all good. All right, okay, so we're all good here. So that's basically the situation with SCSI. So I just wanted to do a little bit of that ground information with SCSI first before we moved on to SCSI2SD. Also need to mention that a lot of these Macs, in particular if we're talking about ones like the Classic that we're just looking at, this is your internal SCSI connector, it's your 50-pin ribbon cable, and this is your external SCSI connector, and that's your 25-pin, what do they call those things? I can't remember what they call the plugs. Someone will think of it in the chat. But you have those plugs there for your external. What is really, really important with this is because I've had a few people that have said they just want to buy the external SCSI2SD, the version 5.5, which we'll look at in a minute. And I'm just going to get rid of the internal one. Not all of them, but a lot of these early computers, if you didn't have anything connected to the internal ribbon, the termination wouldn't work properly. So you would be in a situation where you plug in the external one and it just doesn't boot. It's just got a flashing question mark. It's not recognizing the drive at all. And it's not recognizing the drive because the internal bus is not terminated. And the way you can get around that is, number one, even if you've got a dead hard drive, you can connect that up without the power connected to it, and it will still be providing the internal termination. So even if you're in a situation where you've got one of these and the hard drive is dead, just disconnect the power from it, leave the drive there, and that will maintain that termination for the resistors here to terminate that drive on the internal bus. The other thing you can do is you can get an internal terminator. I've got this one here. You can get some that actually just go straight into that there. They're just like a little card that goes in. I don't know how readily available they would be today. There's not a lot to them, but I've got one here at the moment from a customer. I'm very tempted to actually reverse engineer it and start making some of my own, because they're very handy things to have. But this is basically just a terminator. That's all it is, just a terminator that you can tack onto the end of a ribbon cable. And so with this, I can basically get this connected to the ribbon cable here like that, plug this in there, and that is going to terminate the internal bus. So I just mentioned that because there are quite a few people who've gone, oh, look, SCSI2SD, what a fantastic thing. I'm just going to use the version 5.5 and share it around on all my computers because they're expensive, which I quite understand. But you just have to keep that in mind. If you've got nothing connected to the internal, they may not boot up off the external on some of the older computers in particular. That will be the case with things like Mac 2, 2X, 2CX, 2SI, Classic 2, SE30, all of those ones, they need to have that internal one terminated if you're going to boot off the external. Okay, so you still use 10 base 2, my goodness. Is that Bernadette pecking the food bag again? Yes, it was. It was Bernadette over there eating the food bag. There's a little hole in the food bag, and she just every now and again pops in and grabs herself some food. I'm talking about my chicken, by the way, so anyone who might have missed that. Okay, so that's just getting some of that foundation stuff out of the way with SCSI2SD. Now we're going to actually start looking at these different types of SCSI2SD. I've talked about these in my review video. If you want to find out more about them, jump onto that video. If you want to find out where the SD card just landed on the floor, you'll have to wait because I'm going to need to look for it. So this is SCSI2SD version 5.5. What's great about these is they are external. You can just connect them on to the back of the computer, obviously penning that stuff that we talked about before, and you can boot from them, and you can stick a great big SD card in it. You can have lots of different operating systems running off it and all that sort of stuff. They're very, very convenient. What I do with mine is I have System 7.1, System 6, System 7.0, and System 6.8, 7.01, 7.1, and 7.5.3, I think, installed on this on 4 separate SCSI IDs, and I can boot off this on a variety of different computers. And for instance, if I'm in a situation where I might need to run a check on a hard drive, I can boot off this, run Norton's, I can boot off this, I can install a system, I can format a hard drive. So boot off this and then run off the internal. Now most of the time internal SCSI hard drives are set to ID 0, so I have this set to an ID that's not the same as 0. I have, as I say, I have 4 different drives on this, virtual drives on it, and they're set up as IDs 6543. 3 is a bit of an iffy one sometimes because a lot of computers have their CD-ROM drives set on 3. So, but it's very easy to change the SCSI ID using the SCSI2SD utility. So, if you do end up using a computer that has got ID 3 occupied, you can just move to a different ID, move it to 2, whatever. The external is not as fast as the internal. If you watch my benchmarking video, you'll see that the external is significantly slower than the internal models. Don't ask me why that is the case, but it is the case. These also are permanently terminated. So whereas some of these devices, these SCSI2SD devices, you can change the termination with software, or you can change the termination by changing resistors. The SCSI2SD version 5.5 termination is permanently on. It is designed to be the only device connected to the external bus. So in theory, you've got your internal devices and then you've got your external, and this is permanently on termination. Now, yes, you can get cables that you can get sort of like those double adapter type cables where you maybe don't want this terminated, but it is terminated. So just be aware that SCSI2SD 5.5 permanently terminated, can't switch termination off. It will get all of its power from the SCSI bus, but the exception to that is the Macintosh Plus. I can confirm 100% that the Macintosh Plus does not provide power for this. That it apparently can be remedied by putting a diode somewhere. I've never investigated it myself and done it, but I did hear someone talking about it on a forum the other day, saying you can actually plonk a little diode down onto the Mac Plus logic board, which will then provide power to an external SCSI2SD. So just letting you know, I have never been able to get this to work on my Mac Plus. I know people who have got SCSI2SDs working on a Mac Plus, but I am not one of them. And because I have a floppy MU, I haven't really bothered to expend too much of the time on it. But just warning you, if you're thinking about getting one of these from Mac Plus, first of all, you will need to externally power it. So you use the USB port connected to a USB power source to power this up, because it won't get the power from the computer. And then, as I say, you've got to change some of the settings, and you may well have trouble getting it to work, particularly with the early pluses, which apparently have a slightly different SCSI chip or SCSI ROM or something like that. Why is the internal 50 pin and why is the external 25 pin? Because I have no idea. I mean, certainly not all of the 50 pins are used internally, and I've never been able to get anyone to tell me for certain whether the external bus on these older Macs is slower than the internal bus. It certainly is the case on some of the later Macs. They had like SCSI2 internal and SCSI1 external. So the internal was definitely faster than the external. But on these older ones where they're all SCSI1, I've never really done any benchmarking to see whether if you have an internal drive and you do a benchmark test and then you move that same drive to the external bus, whether it's slower. But I can tell you that this one is definitely slower. But yes, as to why one is 50 and why one is 25, I don't actually know the specific history behind that, so I do apologise. Extra pins and more grounds. You see, there are people here that know this stuff. I think the row closest to the external connector are all just ground pins, so there you go. So, so that's basically it for the version 5.5. The one thing I will say about this is these come with a case, and the case normally goes all the way to the end of the board here. But when you connect this to, say, a Macintosh 2CI or a 2CX, you can't plug them in properly because this plastic hanging down the end here, it hits the plastic of the actual case of the Macintosh 2CI, 2CX, Quad 700 for that matter. So I've, with mine, just got a Dremel and I just shaved the end off it. But what you can do is you can just get one of those kind of gender bender, gender extender type things and put them in between. So you can get like a 25 male to 25 female little plug that can just go on the end and just extend that a little bit. If you don't want to cut your case, you can just get one of those. And I'm probably going to end up selling them on my website soon anyway, for anyone who does want this, doesn't want to alter the case and does want to be able to use them on things like 2CI, 2CX and Quad 700. So that's the version 5.5. Also uses a micro SD. Then I've got a version 5.2 here, very, very similar to the version 5.1. The main difference between the 5.2 and the 5.1 is the 5.1 in this location here has a spot to put an external connector. So you could use this as an external SCSI2SD if you wanted to. I have removed that because most people these days are just buying this one. They removed that and it's been replaced with all of this fancy stuff here, which is SPI support. Some of the things that are going to be coming out here are potentially being able to connect your SCSI2SD up to Ethernet or Wi-Fi. But more importantly, these are going to be coming out shortly with, well, I think it will be an optional extra to actually have a little chip on there, like a little ROM type chip, little flash chip, with an operating system already on it. So what that will mean is you'll be able to just buy one of these, plug it straight into your computer, and it'll boot straight into an operating system. Let's say 7.5 or something like that, and it might have hard disk toolkit installed on it, maybe SCSI probe, that sort of thing, which will enable you to, and a system installer, so you can plug this in and potentially install an operating system onto the SD card or onto another device or something like that. So that's the SCSI2SD version 5.2 board that we're talking about here, and most importantly, the version 5.1 is discontinued, so you can't get that anymore. Version 5.5 is what is available now, and this is one of those. This has a BERG, B-E-R-G floppy connector here for the power, and a lot of people have complained about that, myself included, but you do have to remember that very rarely will you ever need to connect power to this anyway. I did find that I needed to connect power to it when I had it plugged into a Macintosh 2SI. Don't know why, but it didn't work properly on the 2SI without power connected. But on the whole, you won't need any additional power to this. It'll just get the power from the SCSI bus. This does have software termination, so there are no termination resistors on this, like we saw on the hard drive. There are no termination resistors there because you can just terminate this using the SCSI2SD utility, switching it on and off. Micro USB connector, full SD card, holdery thingy there. What we also have here, there's actually little pads here for power. If you wanted to, you could connect one of those Canon type power plugs onto the board and supply 5 volts of this from an external 5 volt power supply if you wanted to. I don't know why you would want to, but if you wanted to, you could, because that is actually, those sections there, they are connected to the 5 volt power. This doesn't need 12 volt power, it only needs 5 volt power. Let me just check and see if there are any questions here. Retro Guy has a blog post about the diode mod on a plus. That's great to hear. Thank you, Malcolm Campbell. So yes, have a look for Retro Guy about the diode mod on a plus. I'm tempted to do it myself, actually. I won't make a video on it if someone's already done it. Okay. Just having a look here. Just got to check and make sure the right people jumping in and asking questions. 2 limit. How would a SCSI2SD smash those limits? Am I missing out? So, I've never done a bench test between a floppy MU and a SCSI2SD. And the thing is that a floppy MU is really only going to give you that, because it can only emulate a hard drive on some computers. A floppy MU can emulate a floppy drive on any computer that has a floppy connector. But it can only replicate a hard drive on some of the older computers, and I can't remember the exact list. But on those computers, I've never actually done a bench test. I would be interested to do it, but SCSI bus is faster than the floppy, so you will get faster throughput on a SCSI2SD compared to a floppy MU. As to the difference, I haven't actually got that information to share with you, but the SCSI2SD would definitely be faster. Having said that, I have my floppy MU running on my Mac Plus, and it's blazingly quick. It's so much faster than actually reading from a floppy. It works beautifully. It's a Mac Plus, for goodness sake. I mean, what do you want from that? So that's the SCSI2SD version 5.2. We've got the SCSI2SD version 6 here. It is faster. It is slightly different. It will be faster across the board. Anything you connect this to, it will be faster. And it apparently also can take better advantage of faster SD cards. So when some of my bench testing, when I was putting faster SD cards in this, I was getting a better difference in performance between the slower SD card and the faster SD card out of the version 6. The version 6 is much faster, also has software termination. But what you can also do is if you connect this to the USB, it will mount the first partition of the SD card, or the first device of the SD card, onto the computer that it's connected up to. So if I got this, put an SD card in it, plug this into my computer now, the contents of that SD card are going to appear on the desktop of my computer. But, very important, if you are formatting this card in a vintage Mac format like HFS or whatever the file system was, AFS, whatever it's called, the file format that we used on the vintage Macs like System 7.1 or 7.5, you're formatting it in that format. You then plug it into your modern Mac. It'll mount it, but you can't write to it because ever since System 10, operating OS 10.5, you've only been able to read and not write to those old HFS, which stands for Hierarchical File System. There's a mouthful for you. So ever since 10.5, you've only been able to read and not write to the SD cards. So I know a lot of people, when they get a SCSI2SD, they think, oh, this is fantastic. I'm going to just pull the SD card in and out, and I'm going to copy files to it off my Mac, and then I'm going to plug it in again. Saves me from having to network it, saves me from having to do FTP or use external devices. I'm just going to copy stuff to and from the SD card and plug it in. Well, yes, but with some fairly significant caveats. Because as I say, you take that SD card, you plug it into your modern Mac, it mounts, but you can't copy anything to it. Copy stuff off it, but you can't copy anything to it on the new operating systems. Now what I do, I have a G5 permanently set up running 10.4. And that's how I get data to and from the SD cards. Because I can then just mount that SD card onto my G5. My G5 is connected up to my home network, so I can just drag files from my modern Mac onto the G5, then I can copy from the G5 onto the SD card really, really quickly, and then away we go. So let's just check and make sure here. Is the version 6 more expensive? Yes, it is. It does definitely cost more. But as I say, it is faster. So if you're out for speed, if you're a speed demon, you want the fastest thing out there, you go with the version 6. Okay, let's have a look here. You will only see where have my files gone text if you have connected an HFS to a Mac OS that dropped HFS support. That's correct. And that happened around about version 8, System 8, I think it was, when they changed that file format. My memory is a bit sketchy on that. Copy files from newer computer to older computer, then use older computer to write to SD card. Fiddly, but does work. And that is exactly what I do. And if you have something set up permanently for it, it's very, very quick and easy. My desk is set up with my classic Mac Pro on the right, my G5 on the left, you know, and it's just really, really easy. I access the G5 just by screen sharing, you know, so it's really easy. Where are we? I bought one off you last week. Hopefully I'll be able to use the floppy EMU to install 7.5 to it, because I can't seem to get any OS on my stock LC3 hard drive. I reckon it's failing. Okay, so one of the things that I do when I sell these online, one of the options is to buy it with a pre-formatted SD card with an operating system already on it. Now, it does cost a little bit extra, because you're not only paying for the SD card, you're also paying for the time it takes me to set those up, because every single one of those SD cards I format on a vintage Mac. I don't do, you know, image copies or anything like that. I actually format the SD card on a vintage Mac, then I copy the files across from my G5. I keep a whole stack of them all ready to go. I've got a whole bunch with 2 GB partitions and a whole bunch with 4 GB partitions. And then, depending on which operating system you select when you buy from me, I then copy it across. I do recommend that to people. If you are the sort of person that just wants to tinker, just go for it, tinker. I get that totally. But if you're someone that just wants plug and play, I recommend spending the extra dollars, getting the SD card with the system on it. You can then just plug the thing straight in and away you go. So just while I'm on that topic of the 2 GB and 4 GB partition, System 6 through to System 7. Early 7.5, I think, the maximum size partition you could have on a drive was 2 GB. Now, that's a lot of space back then. When we were talking about computers that came with 40 megabyte drives, here's a flashy 230 megabyte. So when we're talking about 2 GB, we're talking about a lot of space. But of course, buying SD cards these days, I've had trouble buying anything smaller than a 16. So what I do with those is I create multiple 2 GB partitions. So on the so if someone says to me they want to install System 7.1, 2 GB maximum for that, I then just create multiple 2 GB partitions. If someone says they want System 7.5.3, 753 will allow a 4 GB maximum partition. So with those ones, I just divide them up into like 4 GB partitions. So that's just something to keep in mind, that you can utilize all the space on the card, but it has to be done in partitions, you know, based on the maximum size that you have there. So I'm happy to tinker, pretty handy. Yep, look, you're the same as me, seriously. I mean, there's no way I would ever buy a SCSI2SD already pre-configured, because I love playing with that sort of stuff, and I get that totally. But if, you know, I've got quite a few customers that come to me and they just simply they're not resourced well enough to be able to do it. You know, here is one of the most common questions that someone asks. They say, I've bought myself a SCSI2SD, how do I get it to work? And the answer to that question is, I've just bought myself a blank hard drive, how do I get it to work? It's exactly the same. Yes, it's modern technology, yes, it uses SD cards, but when you put an SD card in one of these, it's effectively a blank hard drive, the same as a blank hard drive. And you have to ask yourself, well, if you went out and bought a new one of these, how would you get files to it? It's exactly the same question. You know, you basically have to plug it in. You need to boot from an install CD or an install floppy, install an operating system on it, format it, that sort of thing. The part that gets a little bit complicated is that the genuine Apple formatting software of those vintage Macs doesn't like hard drives that don't fit into its very, very, very limited range of drives available. And there are ways that you can program a SCSI2SD to pretend to be one of those drives, but I just think it is so much easier just to use a third-party formatting utility. You've got Silver Lining, you've got Hard Disk Toolkit, you've got Lido, and you've got a hacked version of the Apple one that will allow you to format any sort of hard drive. For me, my formatting tool of choice is Hard Disk Toolkit. Always used it back in the day, have just always liked it, always found it to be very good, very reliable, good formatting software. So I always use Hard Disk Toolkit to format. Okay, so just going to check and see if anyone does have a specific question they would like answered, because there's obviously a lot of chat going on here, has a specific question, please feel free to put the @Brankus Creations, @Brankus Creations to make it stand out, because with a lot of this chat I do tend to miss some of the stuff that's going on, and some of it's just you guys chatting between yourselves, and so I look at this and I don't realise that you're not actually asking a question. So okay, yep, HD setup is the name of the Apple HD setup, and there is a hacked version of that will allow you to format any sort of SCSI drive. It won't just be limited. If you don't have the non-hacked version, you put it in, it comes up and says it doesn't recognise any hard drive for formatting. Even though it knows it's there, it doesn't recognise it. So, which I'll tell you which hard drive toolkit Erwin I use. I typically use, if I'm under System 7.1, I use version 1.8, which I have a copy of. I don't even think that one is on the Garden. If it's not, I must put it up there. So I use version 1.8. If I am using System 7.5, I use, I think is it 3.6 Personal Edition or something like that? I've got it on this drive, so we can always have a look at that. So anyhow, there are a few other versions of SCSI2SD out there. There is the version 5, which is the one that's sort of shaped like that. It's about the width of it's about that sort of size. Now, an important thing about that's made by a company called ITEAD in China. You can buy them directly from them. There is a link in the description where you can buy them from them. I do like those ones, but they are quite expensive. One of the reasons why they have no longer been made, or they're no longer being made by Inertial Computing, and they're only being made by ITEAD, is that he hasn't been able to get some chips for that because they're discontinued. He hasn't been able to get them in commercial quantities for him to be able to produce as many as he needs. So that's why he is all doing this version 5.1, 5.2 layout of board, because they use different chips here. So what he's referring to, the ones that he has trouble getting, are these little, what are they, hex converters or something like that. These guys here, N74F06. Now I've found a place where I can get pretty good quantities of them, but they're obviously not available in the sort of quantities required for the number of SCSI2SDs that Inertial Computing make. And that's why that version 5 is only available from ITEAD. You will also find the version 5 on eBay, but they are always way, way more expensive than buying them direct from ITEAD. Okay, so just keep that in mind. With the introduction of macOS 10.6, Apple dropped support for formatting or writing HFS disks and images, which remain supported as read-only volumes. Yes, that is correct. I said 10.5, didn't I? So 10.6. So you can still write to them under 10.5. Yeah. Yeah. The reason why I use 10.4 is because I can then boot into classic mode. So. Starting with macOS 10.15, HFS disks can no longer be read. Well, there's a really good reason not to go to 10.15, isn't there? I can give you lots of good reasons not to upgrade your operating system. All right, okay, so where are we? Do you reckon the Wi-Fi chip will allow you to dump the files at will from an SFTP connection, which is a killer feature I use all the time on my Pi 3? I can't answer that conclusively. At this stage, that is all stuff that is coming. So I can't say I'm not involved in any of the development of that. I'm involved in the beta program of that, but not in the development. And at this stage, it's all up in the air as to exactly what capabilities were there. But I do know that the option for buying these with a pre-installed 7.5 on a chip on the board is coming very soon. I've actually got some chips here. I haven't had a chance to do the testing myself, but I know that they are prototyping that at the moment. Okay, when is the Berg power connector needed on the 5.2? It should generally run off SCSI bus power. Right, you're exactly right. When is it needed? Almost never. The only time I've ever needed to use it, 2 times I've needed to use it. Number one was when I mounted one of these in an external case. It wasn't able to get enough power running across the long cable. So external case, I had to use the Berg connector. The other one was I needed to use the Berg connector in my Mac 2SI. Don't ask me why, because I don't know why, but it just did not work without the power in my 2SI. Every other computer I've put one of these in, it's got the power from the SCSI bus. So yeah, it's the reason why they put a Berg connector on it in the first place, because the assumption was that you just would not need to use it, but it was there if you did need it. Because, you know, as you can see, these are quite a bit narrower than a normal hard drive there. So obviously the Molex connector takes up a lot of that space, and they were able to do that and make these narrower. Now, one of the things with it being narrower is a bit of a problem sometimes, because what that does is that it means that it can't just be mounted in place of a hard drive, because the holes aren't in the same position. Here are my mounting holes here, and here are my mounting holes on that hard drive. So these are actually mounting holes for a 2.5-inch drive, but this is too wide to fit in a 2.5-inch drive spot. You know, because I mean, here's a 2.5-inch drive here. It's still big. So so it's kind of an odd thing, and I've always felt like that's a bit of a design flaw on these. But you know, that's my opinion. That's one man's opinion. That's all. So what you need to do with these, and I would generally recommend if you do buy one of these, you will make your life a lot easier by buying a mounting bracket or 3D printing your own if you have a 3D printer. There are STL files for SCSI2SD mounting brackets on Thingiverse, so you can find them. So this basically you just screw in with 4 screws here, and then you can use these screws here to either mount from the bottom or mount from the sides. You only need 2 screws to mount these because they're so light. And then these have a nice little window for the SD card slot and the USB there. So these mounting brackets work on both. They work on the 5.1, the 5.2, and the version 6. They're all the same mounting bracket for those. They're available in white and black. But I mean, if you're happy to have these stuck in with a little bit of double-sided tape or something, no problem. But if you want them to just go into the same mounting bracket as the original drive that was there, you know, in your vintage Mac, you know, go with the plastic mounting bracket. That's what I would recommend. So, right, okay, so that's that there. If we're talking about the version 5.0, which is that narrow one I was talking about, I don't have one with me here at the moment, I'm afraid. They actually have the holes in the same position as these two. So it's that sort of size with these 2 mounting holes there. So you can actually just use a couple of standoffs or something like that, mount them onto an existing bracket from the bottom. If you want to mount them from the side, like for instance, if you're putting it in an SE30 mounting bracket, which mounts from the side, you can just get you know, a little L bracket or something to put it on there to screw, you know, sort of screw it onto there. So that's that, and then there's also the version 4.2, which I don't have one built, but I do have the boards. Have I got them here? Yeah, this is the boards here. I've got blank boards for these, and as you can see with these are wider than the version 5.1, and more importantly, the mounting holes are in the same position as a hard drive there, like that. So there's your mounting holes there. So again, these, you don't need any sort of mounting bracket for them, really. You're likely to just get a couple little plastic standoffs and a couple of screws, and you just be able to mount this onto an existing bracket using one of those. So yeah, that's one of the things I do like about the version 4.2, the fact that it doesn't need any sort of special mounting bracket, even though I have made one in 3D print, if you want one, that just, you know, just instead of using standoffs, it's actually got a bracket there. So that is that's the version 4.2, and I do make these. They're available to purchase on my website if you're in Australia. I hand assemble these, test them of course, and out they go. Now there is another type of SCSI2SD, and that is the PowerBook edition. Now once again, the PowerBook edition, I don't have one of those made, though I will soon because someone bought one the other day, so I have to make it. They are a much smaller version of the SCSI2SD. I've got boards for those here as well, somewhere. I hope I do, because here we are, got them. So these are cute. I like these. These are really small and cute. So that's these, and these are designed to replace a 2.5-inch SCSI hard drive like this. And again, they have the mounting bracket holes in the same spot, so you shouldn't have any trouble mounting these into the same place that a hard drive like this came out of. Now, these are not readily available anymore. And again, that comes down to the availability of these chips here that I was just talking about before, that these chips are a little bit harder to find these days. And so they're not able to get hold of those in the sort of commercial quantities to print out, to make a large run of these. So what they have done at Inertial Computing, they've used the board of the 5.5, this one here, with a little add-on board that it tacks onto to give it the mounting bracket holes, the mounting holes, to go into a PowerBook. So essentially what you do is you have one of these boards which piggybacks onto another board which has the connector on the side. It doesn't have this connector, but it has the connector on the side here, and it has the mounting holes. And that's what they're selling, but it's my understanding at the moment they're out of stock, but they will be back. So essentially what they've done is they've turned the version 5.5 into a slightly modified PowerBook edition. That's what is available from Inertial Computing when they're in stock for your PowerBook. But if you want one of these are one of the ones that I do sell overseas. So if you're wanting a PowerBook edition SCSI2SD, I can make these up for you, hand assembled lovingly by me, and I can send them if you're happy to if you're happy to pay for the shipping. All right, so that's the version 4.2. So that's pretty much all of the SCSI2SD models that I can think of. If you have any questions about them, just sort of feel free to ask, just jump in there. I like how version 6 support PowerPC. Yeah, I mean, you can connect the older ones onto PowerPCs. I'm sure I've connected. Excuse me. I have connected all of these up to 6100, so they definitely support that, and they even support SCSI 2. Excuse me. That's even the version 5, version 4. All of they support SCSI 2. My apologies for the coughing, folks. I've been talking rather a lot. So look, I did actually want to install a SCSI2SD in a Mac Classic and get it all fired up. I don't know. We'll see how we go. Let me just see if I can launch SCSI2SD utility, and we will. I'm just going to go here to. Just bear with me a moment. I'm going to go quiet for a second. And that. I'm back, but I am just fiddling around here at the moment. This is something that I should have, of course, prepared earlier, but I ran out of time. So just a second. Okay, hopefully you can hear me, but you can't see me. So what we're going to do now is we are going to display capture. We'll get to that one. Actually, hang on. Let's try that. Nope, it's not that. Sorry, folks. Window capture, that's what I want. And we are going to call this one SCSI2SD. window. This is me playing around in OBS, clearly not knowing what I'm doing, but that's okay. So SCSI2SD utility, there we have that. And then what we're also going to do is we're going to add another one, which will be the window cap chart. We're going to call that log, because we need to see this. SCSI2SD has a little log window, and there's some quite debug log, some quite important information in this when you're using it. So we're just going to put him there. We're going to get that. We're going to make that a little bit bigger so we can all see it. We're going to get that, make that a little bit bigger so we can all see it. And then, well, it wouldn't be right without a picky of me, would it? So let me just grab this one here. Really should have got all this done before, but you know. There we go. All right, so there we go. Sorry about that, folks. We just had a little bit of waiting time there. So this is the SCSI2SD utility, which you can download. It's about PPC support. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. Well, as I say, I definitely have had the version 5, version 4.2, the version 5.0, the version 5.2, and the version 6. I've had them all connected up to a PowerPC. So. Yeah. The version 6 probably provides better throughput on a PowerPC, but yeah. If you have a look at my benchmarking video, feel free to jump on and have a look at that when you get a chance. You'll find the test results of me connecting it up to a 6100. So supposed to have that built in. Okay, cool, excellent. Good information coming out here from everyone, so that's fantastic. So, SCSI2SD utility, here's all the configurable settings that we have in here. Now, I'm going to get hold of a brand spanking new SCSI2SD version 5. Incidentally, that's a version 6. The version 6 uses a different SCSI2SD utility, and that is because it is a different chip on there. And the other really important thing about the SCSI2SD version 6 is it stores your settings on the SD card, not on the chip on the board. Version 5.2 stores your settings on that. So if you don't have a card in the version 6, you're going to fail to save any of the settings, but more importantly, if you save the settings onto a particular card and then swap cards, all those settings from that previous card follows the card around. So you have to redo your settings if you put a different card in there. Very important with the version 6, that's the way it works. Not so with the version 4, version 5, version 5.1, 5.2. They all store your settings on the chip itself. It's a little chip here. It is a programmable system on a chip. It's a little RISC chip. Now I've got to go down and find this SD card that I dropped before, because without it, this will be a very pointless exercise. So this is me now crawling under the desk, trying to find an SD card. It's a full size, it's not a micro, so hopefully that will make it a little bit easier to find. But I do need it. I prepped it all before. That was me actually doing some prep for once. And then I dropped it. Found it. Found a screwdriver as well. And a pair of tweezers. Sorry, I banged my I banged my my microphone on the way up there, so you probably got terrible crackle, so I apologise for that. Right, okay, so 6100 only supports 5 megabits per second. I can tell you one thing for sure, the throughput was way faster on a 6100 than it was on the others. So, only 2 hours sleep last night. I shall be off. Thanks for the entertainment. You are most welcome, sir. Thank you for joining, and thank you for all the, you know, the work you do, putting the links into my website and all that sort of stuff. So much appreciated. I shall speak to you tomorrow. So, SCSI2SD version 5. I'm going to pop the card in. Now, this is a card that has actually already been pre-formatted, and it has already got an operating system on it. But I just wanted to connect this in here and show you something when we connect this via USB to this computer, and we'll see what goes on the screen here. Plug. Okay, got my light flickering away on here, and you can see down on the bottom, SCSI2SD ready, firmware version 4.8.4. Right, now, on the log here, you can see that it recognizes the SD card. The SD capacity, 512 byte sectors, 309-34016. So I want to set this SCSI2SD up to utilize the full capacity of that card. So here's the way I'm going to do that. I'm going to go to the, I'm going to go here to this, and I'm going to select that text there. I'm going to copy it. So I've just selected that, the byte count there. And keeping in mind this is a brand new SCSI2SD. No settings have been, it just has the default settings, which are what you see here. So these are all the default settings. So I now want to set this up so that it recognizes the whole 16 gig of the card that I just put in it. So I'm going to go here to the sector count, and I'm going to paste the number that I copied from the log into that. Now, this is telling me it has 309-34016 sectors. This is starting from sector 0. So if it's starting from sector 0, I have to, it is my understanding that what I have to do is reduce that by 1. I may not need to, but I do anyway. Reduce that by 1, so it's starting from sector 0, and then it's going up to that as the top sector. Might actually be able to just leave it as 016, but the person that did this once before, that's what they did. They reduced that by 1. So we reduce that by 1. We now show that it's showing 4.7505 gigabytes of space. That's all good. I'm going to set this to Apple Quirks mode. I don't know what difference that makes. For me, it seems to work without Apple Quirks mode, but you know, if I'm connecting it up to an Apple, sure. We've got here SCSI ID 0. Now, obviously, that's fine if I've got no other drive inside there, but if I was, for example, wanting to copy stuff from an old drive to a new drive, I might set that at a different ID so that I don't get a conflict, then come back and change it back to a different ID. So, I might be able to leave it as it was. Yeah, I know, I'm starting to doubt myself there on that one too, but anyhow, no harm in taking one away, it will be fine. So, I've got here that this is now using the full capacity of that SD card, and I'm going here to the general settings. I generally always switch parity on, always switch SCSI2 on. It won't be able to utilize those on all computers, but there's no harm in having them on. There is harm in switching enable disk cache on. It does work faster when you switch it on, but it does some sort of blind write type thing, which means that if your computer fails while it's writing data, you can lose that data that's being written. If you leave the disk cache off, you're not going to have that problem. So I generally leave that off. Some of these settings you might need to change if you're working on an older Mac, but for the majority of Macs, you can keep them the same, but I just switch those two on. I've got this good to go, and now we just need to save to device. You didn't see that, but from the file menu, I selected save to device. You can see it saving this data to the chip. It's flashing as we save. Flash, 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 flash. And get down to, what is it, 251? There we go. Save complete. So that has now been saved. Now, I can disconnect this, and that's now got that data saved into this little chip in here. Now, let's just say, for argument's sake, I went away, did some stuff, came back, and I said, you know what, I don't want this on SCSI ID 0 anymore. I want it on SCSI ID number 5 or something. So you quit, you've quit out of SCSI2SD, you've relaunched it, it's just loaded up the defaults. So here's all the defaults here. You want to make one small change. What you do is you connect your device like this to the USB. Whoops. It'll come up, say it's ready, firmware version 4.84. You go up to the file menu, which you can't see, and you select load from device. What that will do, it will read the stuff that I saved to this chip, it'll read it into this display, and then you can make changes, and then save to device again. So when you launch SCSI2SD, it just loads up the defaults. So you need to load the configuration from this device into the SCSI2SD utility, make your change, then save it back to the device. Very important, otherwise you might accidentally write over some important configuration settings. So we've got this set to 0. I'm going to leave it as 0. you know, but there we go. And then of course this is how you also do your firmware update. You can't, I'm sorry you can't see the menus here or the way I've got this captured, but if you go to the file menu, there's an option for upgrade firmware, and then you can update it. However, if you are using, if you see on yours that it's version 4.84 at this time, that is the latest version. So, so yes, this is a really important thing, is it's not just Macs. Everything I do with the SCSI2SD is Mac centric, but it's not just Macs. So there are people using these things on synthesizers, on Amigas, you know, that sort of thing. So, so there are differences there. Now, this information here, this vendor product ID, this is how you trick these devices into being another drive. You can program them so you can make the computer think that it's actually like a quantum drive like this. As I mentioned before, I don't do any of that. I just use third-party formatting utilities. Right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I am going to actually put this in a computer. So, and then we're going to fire it up. So I'm just going to have to put this into this mounting bracket. I may not do all of the screws up because I'm not sure I can be bothered. I'm very good at can't be bothered. That's one of my favourite pastimes. And I will be finishing this up very soon. Once we get the computer booting from this, we'll be good to go. So there we go. Screw there. So we're very nearly finished, folks. Everyone, thank you for watching. I do appreciate you spending the time. This has turned out to be a much longer live stream than I expected. We're coming up to 3 hours now. Things obviously did take a little bit longer with the Classic than I expected. And then, of course, when I started talking about SCSI2SDs, boy, didn't I get going. Far out. Right, so let's just move this out of the way. Need to make a little bit of space for this Classic, which I'm going to lift up here now. Just get those screws there. Up she goes. So I'm going to take out the mounting bracket for this hard drive. Please tell me I don't have to remove everything for that. Okay, that. Now this SD card that I have connected to this version 5.1, as I mentioned before, does actually have, now I'm going to undo another screw here, does actually have an operating system on it, system 7.0.1, and it has been formatted with multiple 2 GB partitions. I've done that all before. We're not going to be going through that today. I am probably going to do that in another video, going in and just taking a blank one and formatting it. But for this one, we're just going to be taking one that's already been configured and popping it in here. There's a limit to how much information I can obviously give at any given time. I don't want any sort of information overload. There's a little screw there. Okay, this is coming out now. I don't think this is the original mounting bracket. That does not look like an original Mac Classic mounting bracket to me. It fits, but I don't think it's the original one. So it doesn't really matter for the purpose of what we're doing. It's not going to matter at all. What does matter is the screw that fell out, finding that so that it doesn't stay inside this computer. Where are you, screw? Hey, screw! Did it fall through? Oh, it fell through. That's it there. It's already on the ground. Great. Great. So, time to connect up the SCSI2SD. We're going to take this big old clunker off. As to the onboard hardware itself. Sorry, no, so the version 5.2 is the one that in the future will have an operating system already on it, not the version 6. Potentially have an operating system already on it. It has the capability for that. So I'm going to connect this up now. This needs to be around this way because the ribbon cable needs to be out facing that way. That of course means that the SD card are facing the other way, but what you can do is you can get like SD card extenders, so you can have them hanging out the floppy drive or hanging out a hole in the back or something like that. But for me, once I've generally installed a SCSI2SD, I tend to leave them that way. I don't take the card out. If I need to transfer data around, I transfer data around using my 5.5, copy data onto that, then copy it via SCSI. That's generally how I work. It's just how I roll, man. Okay. Is the utility you use made by the same people who make the hardware? Yes, it is. I should mention the one that I was using there, which is kind of a bit clunky, works in the terminal. There is an, for the Mac, oops, wrong screws. There is a native, an OS native one that has recently become available. So, oh, Ron, thank you very much. Happy Easter to you too. We, of course, had ours yesterday, but we are having a public holiday for it today, Easter Monday here. This doesn't quite fit. I mean, I will be able to get it to fit, but it's snug. These holes could be just a smidge further apart. This is a lot easier if you use like one of those electric screwdriver things, you know, just makes life a lot easier. Oh, come on. He thought this was going to be the slowest part of the job. That really does not fit. Yeah, I'm just going to do it up with one screw, not two, because these holes aren't quite in the right position for this mounting bracket. I don't know if that's the fault of the mounting bracket or if it's the fault of the, I don't know if it's the fault of this mounting bracket as opposed to this mounting bracket, but those holes definitely do not line up. So I'm just going to hold this on with one. One of the great advantages with the SCSI2SD is they're very light. So I think one screw should be fine. Come on. These are really snug fit. Okay, there we go. That'll do. It's on, it's not going anywhere. It's held on with one screw. One screw. Okay, so we're now going to grab the computer back again. We are going to put the bracket back in. I know you can't see this very well, but I mean, let's face it, it's not like it's some sort of universal instructions I'm providing here. This is putting a hard drive into a Macintosh Classic. I'm sure people have done that before. I'm not actually providing tutorials on Macintosh Classic teardowns in this video. I will just jump across to the top view here. And I can't really see it, but there we go. Drop the screwdriver on the ground. Going to get my ribbon cable, going to connect that up there. And we are going to hope that we're going to get enough power from the SCSI bus to fire this up. Okay, so we've got our SD card in here. What I would always recommend is make sure that the SD card hasn't popped out while you've been fitting it. It does happen. Moazam Raja, thank you very much. Thank you. And thank you for watching. I do appreciate it. Now, I don't need to connect the power up, so I've basically got, it's all rigged up now. I'm just going to give it some juice. 240 volts, and switch him on. I saw the light come on the SCSI2SD, which is always a good sign. Let's go to the front view. Now, here's what I am expecting to happen. So let's just move this camera down. It's going through its memory test at the moment. Oh, not much memory to test. I forgot to stick the expansion card in. Shall we switch him off? I will switch him off. But we're seeing a flashing question mark. Now, I just mentioned to you guys before that I have this pre-formatted with an operating system on it. So why am I getting a flashing question mark? Well, I know the answer to that, and that is that I copied the operating system to the drive on my G5. So I put the card in my G5 running under system 10.4, and I copied the system across to the drive. The system folder has not yet been blessed. And so at the moment, it's just another folder. It doesn't realize it's a system folder. So it's not finding a system there to boot from. So what we need to do now is we need to bless it. And in order to do that, I'm going to have to boot up off another operating system. So I've got this here. It's going to boot from system 7.1. I'm going to plug this in externally, and we're going to switch him on. And theoretically, it will just boot, when it can't boot from the internal, it will just jump to the external. But if you ever want to force it to boot from the external, you can hold down Shift Option Command Delete, or Shift Option Apple Delete when you boot, and it will force it to boot from the highest SCSI ID down. So normally when you start up a computer, it starts from 0. If it finds nothing at 0, it tries 1. Finds nothing at 1, it tries 2, and so on, and it goes from the 0 upwards. If you hold down Shift Option Apple Delete, it starts from the top down, tries to find something at ID 6. If it can't find it 6, it tries 5, 4, and so on, so on and so forth. So that's just a really important thing to remember, that if you want to force it to boot from an external drive, Shift Option Apple Delete when you switch it on. Quick question, is the SCSI2SD being powered by the computer's SCSI bus right now? It sure is. This is booting now off my SCSI2SD version 5.5, which is plugged into the back. You can't see, but it is. And I can see it flickering away, working quite happily in a Macintosh Classic, working beautifully, and away we go. So it is now, it's now booting up. It's system 7.1 on a Macintosh Classic, which is a little bit on the slow side. That's why it's taking so long to boot, but it's all working. It's flicking. It stopped flicking, but I do believe it will start again. Oh, backspace, yes. Look, it's funny, isn't it? Because on some keyboards it's backspace and some it's delete. But yes, it is Shift Option Command Backspace, but it does have delete written on these Macs. It does appear to have actually frozen, and that could well be because it's System 7. What I might do is restart it with the extensions off, because all I want to do is just boot it enough for me to be able to bless that system folder. Oh, no, here it goes. Started again. It's just wanted to scare me. There we go. It's, okay, there are a couple of things I have on here which it can't use because it's a Mac Classic. Whoopsie. Don't do that. So let's just go through here and click continue. Oh, and yeah, this does happen quite a lot. I'm running a Universal System 7 on this that works on most computers, but some of those universal components upset some other computers like this Classic. So I'm holding down the Shift key this time. Shift key starts with extensions off. So I learned recently that you can pick a specific SCSI ID as well. Shift Option Apple Delete and the number of the SCSI ID you want to boot from, which is indeed correct. So if you wanted to boot from ID 6, you go Shift Option Apple Delete and 6. Now you might run out of fingers, but yes, that does work. But what I should mention, if you have a SCSI2SD that is set up with more than one SCSI ID, so you've got your single SCSI2SD, you've set up device 1 as ID 4, you've set up device 2 as ID 5, you set up device 3 as ID 6. That quick key trick does not work on the SCSI2SD. Don't ask me why, but it doesn't work on the SCSI2SD. But it does work on old, mechanical hard drives and other devices like that. So just worth keeping in mind. That is a good trick, but that trick doesn't work with SCSI2SD. I'm holding down the Shift key while I'm doing this. Shouldn't it say extensions off? SD card extenders work on version 6 SCSI2SD. I can tell you that I know people who have done it, Sean. So, and then I've had a lot of people say, oh, yes, there are some really bad extenders, some of the extenders you buy from China, they don't work very well. It didn't switch off the consonant. Why didn't it switch off the extensions? It's going to crash again. Like that. Let's try this. I'm going to try this one more time, and if it doesn't, we'll do something else. I'll show you what we'll do. I'll boot from System 701, which I have on this computer, on this SD, SCSI2SD. So yeah, apparently some of the extenders don't work, some of the extenders do work, but that's only anecdotal. I've never tested it. I've never actually tried to do that with mine, because as I said, with me, I tend to just leave them connected. No, it's still starting up off the wrong system. So what we're going to do is we're going to connect this device to SCSI2SD utility, and I'm going to do that now. I'm going to plug this in. Excuse me. It's my USB cable on the floor. This won't take long. We're nearly done. I'm going to plug this in. It's going to recognize it. Oh, or I might move that by accident. Okay, version 4.84. Now this is what I was saying before. You need to go up to the file menu, and which you can't see here, and for that I apologize. You have to go up the file menu and select load from device, and it's now going to load all of the settings I have on this particular SCSI2SD, and you'll see all of the different devices that I have on here. Right, okay, we're all loaded up. You can see that I've got system 7.1 selected as ID6. I'm going to change system. There's system 6, and here's system 7.5, and here's system 7.701. I'm going to enable that. I'm going to make that version. I'm going to make that 6, and this one I'm going to make this. What is it? 4? No. 3. Okay, so ID6, ID5, ID4, ID3. So there I've got system 7 as ID6 now. I'm going to save that to device, and in theory that will now boot. If I hold down Shift Option Command Delete, it will boot from ID6, and it will load system 701, and we shouldn't have any of those nasty crashings. Okay, let's go back now to there. Whoop, missed, wrong one. There. Right, plug him in, switch him on. I'm holding down Shift Option Command Delete, or Shift Option Command Backspace, or Shift Option Apple Backspace, and which should make it boot from ID6. And in theory, that will then mean that, don't ask me why I wasn't able to stop the extensions from loading before. Maybe there's something wrong with this keyboard. Maybe what I'm doing now is a waste of time. Oh, didn't like that. All right, I'm going to get very, very tired of this soon if this doesn't work. There's something it doesn't like about the system there, so I don't know what it is. I can always boot into 6, can't I? That system could be damaged for all I know. This is my kind of work SCSI2SD. It really cops the beating, so for all I know, that system could be completely cactus. Yeah, no, it doesn't like that. Back to SCSI2SD. Aren't these fun? Are we having fun? Can I boot from the ROM? Of course I can boot from the bomb. Of course I can boot from the ROM. Why didn't I think of that? What are the keys? Can someone remind me what the keys are for booting from the ROM? Let's just do that. The ROM doesn't have SCSI probe, which I might end up needing, but we'll see. Okay, so can someone please remind me what the keys are to boot from the ROM? I know it's like Shift Option Command Delete X, or Shift Option Command X. Is that it? Let's try that. Command Option XO. Command Option XO. We'll restart it. I'm holding down Command Option XO. There's got to be something wrong with this keyboard. It's like the keys just aren't working at all, isn't it? I think we've probably found out what the issue is here, and I think my issue is my keyboard, because none of my key commands seem to be working. Command Option. Yeah, well, I was doing Command Option XO, wasn't working. So last ditch attempt. If this does not work, we will just move on. But I am now, what I'm going to do now is I am just going to plug this in. I am going to make it so that I'm only, oh, hang on, just a second. I'm going to make it so that I am only using System 6. So there's 7.1, there's 6, and there's 7.5. So let's just check. All the others are disabled. The only one I've got is System 6. So I am going to expect it to just boot using 6, nice and quick. Nice, quick, lightweight operating system. Could bless while booted from floppy. I could, if I had a floppy down here that I could boot from. I'm really starting to suspect that there is an issue. There we go. This is booting into System 6. Nice, lightweight. Do I have SCSI probe? Because if I don't have SCSI probe, I'm not going to be able to mount the one that I've got in here. So anyhow, we'll just see. Hey, SCSI probe. Okay, mount. Moot. Not mounting. Every time I click the mount button, it flashes, but that's all I get. So for whatever reason, it's not mounting that. Well, this has turned out to be a really good demonstration, hasn't it? Remind me never to do these with the classic again. What I usually do with these is I actually use my main machine that I use for mucking around and testing with is a 660 over. Quit and reopen the control panel. Try anything at this stage. All I want to do is mount it. It's weird the way they're kind of blank there, isn't it? I mean, I don't know if there's potentially an issue with the fact that I am running. Oh, you know what I might try? This is an interesting thought. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to connect the because what I'm thinking is maybe there's an issue with powering both of these SCSI2SDs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect power to the external one, just for fun. It was going so well before, wasn't it? I mean, we were basically just going through and we're talking about all this stuff, and yeah, this is how this works, and this is how this works, and yeah, it's all easy, yeah, and it's great. And then we're just going to plug this in, we're going to fire it up, and away we go. And here we are. Booting again from System 6. Okay, I just saw a flicker on the SCSI2SD there, but we definitely did not get it to mount anything. And now I think a lot of the problems I've encountered here have been self-inflicted. Namely, I think my system 7.01 partition on this SCSI2SD is damaged and corrupt. I need to fix that. I need to make sure it's not damaged and corrupt, and I need to make it work. Then I'm just going to, and I think I've got problems with the keyboard that are stopping me from being able to boot into the ROMs. You know, I mean, it's all stacking up here, I'm telling you. This is the very last thing I'm going to try. And I do believe it is futile, but I'm going to try it anyway. I'm just going to make it so that I've only got SCSI, I've only got 7.01 activated. So I'm going to disable that. 7.57, there we go, 7.01. Save to device. Bing, 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 bing. All right. Yes, the mouse works, so I don't think there's anything wrong with the actual ADB, but it's just possibly a problem with the keyboard, because it didn't, Shift key didn't stop the extensions from loading, and yeah, I'm not sure that any of the keys that I've pressed on this while I've been doing it have been working. So yeah. All right. We have done that. This is the very last thing I'll try. If this still doesn't work, we'll just wrap it up and move on. Yes, I like that. Shut it all down and try it the next day moments. Move on to something else. If this just gives me a sad Mac face, then I know that my System 7 installation is corrupt, and I will just have to, I'll just have to abandon this for today. But at least you get an idea of what I was aiming to do. Okay, is that 701? We'll know if we see a little... It's still System 6. What did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? What? Did I not save the settings or something? That's 7. Perhaps I didn't save them. Look at that. You see how angry I was? I just shut it down. So this should boot into... I've only got System 701 configured there. So right. Oh boy, just love it when things go off the rails like this. That's what we do it for. At least we've had an opportunity to have a good old play around with the SCSI2SD utility, try different things and whatnot. Okay, we've got that, we've got that. Oh, that's System 6 again, isn't it? What have I done to this SCSI2SD? I have clearly got some weirdness going on here. I've, in terms of the partitions on this. It's time for me to, I think we will definitely call this a day. If I have any more success here, I will post it on my Facebook page. But I'm not sure that I can blame the SCSI2SD with this. This definitely seems to be technical issues that I'm having at my end. I cannot blame the hardware. The little SCSI2SD that's sitting in here is all going really well. Everything to do with my operating system on my external one seems to be giving us all the grief. So, and just for the sake of testing, let's just see if I can... the X key is stuck down. So the keyboard does work, but that's what the problem we were having. So the the keyboard definitely does have some stickiness issues. So that's why things weren't working, is because it clearly thought another key was stuck down. At least we solved that mystery as well. Okay, so I'm going to shut this down now. I'm going to sign off. I'm going to apologise to everyone that we didn't get to where we wanted to today. I hope I did manage to share at least some information with you that may have been of value. This is one of the reasons why I've just gone in and done this live rather than going in and practicing it all beforehand to make sure it all worked, but that's just one of the joys of live streams, isn't it? So, all right, I'm going to sign off now. I've been live streaming for a lot longer than I expected to. Thank you to everyone for hanging around. Thanks for sticking with it. Got 50 viewers. It's terrible to shut down when I've got 50 viewers watching, but thank you, everyone. And as I mentioned before, it is my intention to just get this sorted out in my own time. You know, I'm not going to keep you guys all hanging on there while I try and fiddle around with it and figure it out. And then I'll do a post on my Facebook page. So please jump onto my Brankus Creations Facebook page and follow. And when I have got this sorted, I will do a little post, maybe even a little follow-up video there. So thanks again to everyone. Thanks for the super chats. Thanks for keeping me company. And I will hope to see you at the next one. We had 3 live streams in a row. One yesterday, one the day before, one today. How about that? Special treat. And at least we did figure out what was wrong with that Mac Classic Logic board, in that we repaired the traces, and then we did find it had a bad ROM as well. So thanks again, people. Have a good one, and I will see you at the next one. Bye now.